Okay, guys, let's get this meeting rolling. We're a little bit late. So roll call, please.
Gannon,
Here.
Casanello,
Here.
Hader. Here. Larson.
Here.
Snyder.
Here.
Ramirez. Lee.
Okay, we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Like how you sound?
No, I hate my voice. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, right into the agenda items. I got the monthly financial report. Any things to highlight, Roberto?
Don't mind.
Okay. My apologies. I was trying to get this mic to work. There's no real highlights. As you guys can see, this is prior to the meals tax collection. I can inform you guys that council that as far as of March, it has moved up to 904,000. It's definitely going to be over what we expected. But I really do not have any updates on this, unless there's any questions, specific questions from council.
Any questions? Okay, my only question is, do you foresee this budget needing to be amended before the end of the year?
Yeah, yes, we will do a third quarter amendment. So that'll be a discussion with finance before we move forward with that.
What are your plans for that? The May timeframe or June timeframe?
It'll probably be the June timeframe.
Okay. Heads up, people, we need to make sure we make the June timeframe so we have a quorum to vote.
Well, we have a new policy in place, so you're not necessarily required to have a quorum if you have remote
Presence.
participation.
Yeah.
You have to have a quorum for the entire, including remote participation, but you don't need one physically.
Correct.
I think I got that right. Isn't that what Martin said? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Roberto. We'll move on. Figure out which, there we go. Draft communication plan?
Vice Mayor, would you like to lead out on this one, or would you like for me to?
You go ahead and I'll
Okay,
follow.
so the draft communication plan, Vice Mayor and I have been working on this document. We're pulling together what our previous consultant, Blue Sky Phoenix, had delivered to us based on their time here in the town and what they worked in the community determining when it came to businesses and residents on how we communicate with them. So we have developed our draft communication plan. We're going to meet on Thursday to discuss it. Vice Mayor and I are, and we will then be reaching out to Councilmember Ramirez to schedule a time that the three of us can sit together this month and workshop the plan based on their two liaison positions. That's why the three of us are working on it. We will then be bringing the council your finalized draft on May 30th. That's our next work session. We will be presenting it to you that evening and talking through it briefly. We will be assigning a little bit of a homework item for the month of June to review it, to develop any questions, concerns, and provide us feedback on it for June. We will come back together and discuss it again at the June work session. Let me pull that date 1 second.
26?
The 26th.
26th, thank you. We'll discuss it on June 26th, and then we would like to have a proposed date of approval at our July regular council meeting. And right now, it's a little up in the air if that's going to be the 3rd, 5th, or the 10th. So that is the only reason I haven't stated that date. But at the July regular meeting, we hope to have it adopted and then go into full implementation of the communication plan for FY24.
Yeah, the 30th is a Tuesday. Is Memorial Day that Monday?
Yes, that is correct. So the council work session is on that Tuesday. Unless we need to change any dates, if we need to change dates, please let Kim know tonight so that we can get it out there to everybody if we have to do a date change.
I would also strongly support reaching out to me with any questions, concerns, any input into the
Yes,
plan.
please.
Sorry, thank you.
Can I ask now?
Sure, sure.
Okay. Yet, while we're talking about it, though, is there a sense or consensus yet on that July 3rd, 5th, or 10th?
So right now we've heard from 3 responses, 2 for the 10th, 1 for the 5th.
Right. Okay. So my response is I'm up in the air, so it doesn't matter. So you can.
Okay,
figure
so
through-
I think that changes us to 3 for the 10th.
Yeah.
I'm for the 10th.
I'm up in the air.
Schedule pending.
Alexander, can you remind us what your,
It's the 10th. He was
10th.
the 10th. Yeah.
so right now everybody's the 10th awaiting
2 others.
2 other responses.
Okay. All right. I did want to ask a question about the impact to budget. When you're doing the plan, are you guys looking at what the resource needs may be needed for that, staff time, all that kind of stuff? Or is this just the plan to do it, and then, because we should try to consider making sure we budget for it?
So I think the best way to answer that is the way we're currently looking at it is getting everything on paper of how we want to communicate, setting our goals and priorities, and then spending FY24 documenting the implementation of it and how it is taxing the staff or not, what resources are needed that we're having to spend additional money on. So we can give hypotheticals of how much staff time we think the communication efforts will be up front, but we want to spend that year in implementation mode of here's what it actually was, here was the data, here's the results, and then come back to council in the new budget season if we need to modify our plan, but also if we need to request anything during budget season.
Also, being the first year of implementation, it would be a study period, right?
Okay, right. Just like we did some other things, like more of a pilot,
Yeah.
you know, more like a soft kind of implementation.
Yeah. I'm assuming that's going to roll up into the staffing numbers, so we don't have to worry about a line item budget.
Right, so right now the proposal is that anything in the communication plan, any type of correspondence we have, whether it be business or community or directly resident related, it would be assigned out with our existing staff. We would, earmark how much time we're working on it, the results of whether it was productive or not, and then we would go from there. So right now, all of those costs, if you will, are going to be rolled into our day-to-day tasks that we're doing. And with our now fully staffed office, we feel that it's going to be great. So
That's good.
Yeah.
moving forward, definitely a soft launch, if you will.
I see you already taking an effort. Maybe you want to try and capture that time that you're doing now as well for the web page training and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
That should all go into the communication plan.
We'll definitely make a mark on our, the way we track our time on our timesheets. We already have it designated out on projects or tasks, so we'll stick that in there for each employee.
Can I ask the mayor, is that part of his framework?
It's part of the COG. Asset management.
Good. Looking forward to seeing it.
So I guess it's my day on the stage for embarrassment, huh? Okay, any more questions?
Good information. Thank you.
Yep, thanks for putting this together. Thank you, Vice Mayor and
Absolutely.
Town Manager. Okay. next line item, the town park building discussion.
Okay, so in your packet, I have put forward a memo. I spoke with several of the council members last week as I was preparing this. I know Marchant and I spoke about it, but what I did here is I proposed just some generic operational costs. We were able to pull some of our existing invoices on some of these line items. We gathered an average. Again, this is a very generic look at what would possibly be entailed at the park building and operational status. This does not include any of the costs to get it to that operational status. This is just once it's up and running, what we're expecting. Marchant and I talked further, and I know he would like to speak to some of our previous discussions, and some materials were supplied here for you this evening. So I do want to turn it over to Marchant to discuss through the park building, give a little bit of that institutional knowledge on where we were at with it, and then we can all discuss some of our options. At the back of the memo, I did pose a couple questions for you guys to please consider in our discussion tonight so that we can make sure, and this is not an exhaustive list, but these are just some items to get us talking tonight.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. We got the building engineering specs, but we also got a sublet services that kind of goes into, I guess, observations and modifications, and it kind of gives, looks like a totally rebuild with a pavilion in the middle and structures on the side. Is that strictly what this piece is for? Is this building?
A portion of it. So what I did is I had Kim attach the previous materials that were presented, mainly so that our newest council member would also have those materials for reference. So those were the ones that the staff had previously presented when we got the IMEG consultants report back, and then when we spoke to an outside contractor. So what was pitched was the option of the renovation cost, but also a generic option of putting a pavilion in that would have a bathroom structure use on the side.
And what was the date of this one? Was this previously done, or was this recently done? The sublet?
It was within the last 3 months. It was either February or March.
Okay, so the guesstimated numbers in here are accurate then?
That's correct.
Okay. So I guess you can take it away then, Marchant.
Yeah, I miscommunicated with Emily. So a lot of the information that was emailed to you was simply the backstop to the presentation I made last month. Alexander, we had gone through a master planning exercise a number of years ago. We were shifting back and forth between utilizing this property as a town center. Then there was discussion of using that property as the town center if this property was sold. A number of interim improvements that were done at the pantry building. I think the food pantry had been there, called the pantry building, the food pantry had been there a number of years. At the point that we decided to keep this property, that we did a master plan. And that's the site plan that you've reviewed already. Second stop was how do we want to revision the master plan or the park property, and that's where this master plan came out. But it's several years old now. It was in 2016. A couple of options for that. We did some key elements that were a part of it. It was pavilion, playground, service building, amphitheater, walking trails, and removing one of the houses. That house is now Cookies and Cream. But we've made sort of these interim steps. There were some repairs that were done to the house, to the foundation wise, but some of those did not hold. And so I believe last fall the council it was asked that we put together some sort of assessment to get a handle on what is happening, and what's clear is that it needs work. It's safe to enter, but it wouldn't be safe to hold, or would not. We would need to do some upgrades if we wanted to use it on a sort of regular basis. Is that a fair assessment? So a lot of the material I presented to you was just the exercise we went through. We hired a consultant, community outreach, number of charrettes, planning commission, ARB, and the council all weighed in on the various elements, and we came out with a preferred option, which is the front, or is the the master plan that you see, the elements of that was the preferred option, but there were a number of alternatives that led up to that preferred option. Specific to the house, there was, one of the things you'll see in the house was two options to either reuse the building in place as a storage and bathroom facilities, which is on top, or a new facility, which would be slightly smaller in square footage, but would be new construction and would provide the bathrooms and also some sort of meeting space. So as I see the challenge now is that we've sort of pushed ourselves into making some sort of decision now, given the condition of the building and its continuing deteriorating state. So, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So that's the sort of decision point we're at, and Emily is lined up. They're looking for direction from us on how do we move forward. Do we look at vetting use of the existing building? Do we look at demolition and going, there was a pavilion that was part of it as a pavilion option. Emily, I'm speaking for you a little bit here, but they listed all the various sort of touch points that we needed to do, or feedback that we need to give the council. One of the options we talked about last month was, do we put it out to the public again and sort of reaffirm the plan? Is there still an interest in these key elements? Is there still interest in a community center or reusing the building? And that's something that's part of the request for directive. That's something that we wanted to do. So that's sort of the 1,000-foot view of all elements of that and where we're at this point. So I do have some other discussion points, but that was just for the background at this point. So,
Thanks for the background.
yep. And the costs, there were costs in the original plan, but those are 7 years old. There's more recent costs that are outlined in Mr. Sublet's report.
You looking for questions now, or you?
No, just saying the reason why I emailed you all, that there's a number, Marchant, can you send me the supporting documentation that was used, and that was the email that went out to you. So that's a lot of information to go through. The PowerPoint is simply a summation of all those things that are attached to it. Mm-hmm. So, but I have some suggestions once the question answers.
I was going to say, I have a question.
Sure.
Could we define community center? So the vision of the community center, would it be a gathering place for recreation, education?
I think it's all part of the question that we would need to do
Okay.
programming of it. I think.
Okay.
Function.
Performing arts.
Right, exactly. Well, look, I've got it all up
The
here.
staffing from the, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the staffing that we put together is simply if we want to open the space. If someone wants to use the space, doesn't have to be programmed, it's just someone wants to utilize the space while they're using the park.
Okay.
And we would have staff that would open it up, staff that would maintain, because there's a public bathroom. I think the original concept, how we had talked about, was having public restrooms that were separately accessible than the meeting space. And so there would be a maintenance cost of opening up the bathroom. So if the meeting space wasn't being used, or conference space, or what you want to call it, the bathrooms would be accessible,
accessible.
by the park patrons. So that may just come with time,
Okay.
you know, in terms of if there's more interest in doing that. So, does that answer your question, or?
Well, it gives me a platform.
Well, I think what it says is if we have the basics, the framework or the structure with which to do it, if it became on a more regular basis, then we would simply need to decide
Okay.
what those costs would be. So, Mr. Mayor, if I may, so obviously we all have our interest on the council. The park is something that I've been interested in for quite a while. I think at this point, it's a question of, the House aside, is do we want the public services that we provide today, police, trash service, government, staffing that we have here, the event support, event planning that we have, what is it, the basket of services that we are wanting to provide? One service was some sort of meeting space. This property here, we looked at vetting this space as a meeting space, but it has some challenges, just because it's a multi-use space right now, and there's some prep to be able to do that. We did have help me for people that have been here a while, was it the phase 2 plan we were supposed to do? At one point, we were going to put an elevator on the back, and we were going to reprogram the police station. We were going to shuffle all the elements, and at one point, there was an opportunity for the council chambers and then a separate meeting space. But that had a lot to do with how we were going to update the building, because these two stairwells over here are not easy to navigate. So that option's away. This has its own challenges. The museum, part of the comp plan looked about having that for a museum and the function is what it's for, which is for the history of the town. We've been able to program that differently, but it has its limitations too. Parking limitations, size limitations, bathroom limitations. So the question is, do we do something at the park as a public service? Is it reuse of the existing building, which there's one option, or do we provide that service? Do we provide some sort of meeting space at the park, new construction? And there's costs associated with that in phasing. So thinking through it, is that something we want to revisit? Not necessarily the reuse of the building, but just say, is there an interest in having a dedicated meeting space as a service that we provide from the town, other than this space, other than that space, and what that looks like, if that would be the helpful stepping point from which to make the decision. I put together sort of a quick assessment of sort of the timing of what each of these means. With the, I'm sorry, Emily, I've jumped right into it. Did you want to go through your other elements first? Or no?
You keep going.
Something I was thinking about in terms of just what it means in terms of timing and how it would work. These are rough numbers. Please pass the extra copy to Emily. Now, one thing, this is strictly a section of timing, how long it would take to do something. I did not talk about, or in this one, I did not estimate what the community outreach would be. But if we were to simply reuse the building today, I'll wait till everybody gets the copy, I'm sorry. If we were to reuse the building today, it's fairly straightforward in terms of just pulling the building permits and any interior architectural drawings. Parking is an issue right now. And any sort of reuse of that building would be a parking challenge. And so I suggested either we do an on-site parking plan where we designate specific spaces, because right now it's uncontrolled, or do we approach the church next door about some sharing options? Now, it's a scheduling issue, because if you have people using the park and the building at the same time, that could be a challenge. If you have church functions that are going on, but it's something in the near term, is that an option to do that? And what that arrangement would be with the church, I have no idea. But even in the future state, right now we use that parking for Haymarket Day, we use it for other functions. I think there's an opportunity there, at least talk to the church about it. Not if there's a fee, or didn't go into much detail other than that. But in terms of timeline, I think we were to put that RFP, absent of any sort of public input on it, I was aggressive with 4 to 6 months, maybe 6 to 8 months, but that's something that could happen fairly quickly. But the cost, that would be the key cost, is the RFP for what that would mean. I did not even think about reconstructing a meeting space for that. Next, if we were to take down the house or move the house and do a pavilion or bathrooms, again, there's some steps that are involved in that. Emily, I didn't have a chance today to talk to you about what a site plan would be required. Probably not a space that would be disturbed. This was the idea of putting the pavilion over the house and paying homage to the outline of the house. Still would have the same challenge of near-term parking plan and shared options. With that, going through all the processes, 18 to 24 months, but you would have separate RFPs for the building, then separate RFPs for the building and the bathroom, and then staffing is just the exercise that Emily went through. What does it take to staff it? Full site plan, obviously we have other bigger projects, but same thing, review of the designs and structures, site plan review. We would have the on-site parking element, but I would suggest we maintain the shared parking options. That would have to take place after the master plan, something at least 3 to 4 years out. You know, the RFP is for the full design, that would be a much larger number. I think the original estimate was 1.9 million for all of the elements. But if we were to dial that back, and we've done some things already with the park, that may not be as much, and would that be a phased approach in staffing? So this is just a way of saying we have some, as I stressed before, I feel like the demand is happening now with the new houses that we have coming in, and is there an ability in the near term to provide some sort of service, if that's a service that we want, if we want a meeting space. If it's no, let's utilize the 2 spaces that we have, then it's the pavilion option, that's just going to take a little bit more time. So that, I put together that, I say draft all over it because this came out of my brain 2.5 hours ago. So my suggestion would be, if the consensus is to revet the civic space or meeting space option for the park, then maybe that's what we put an outreach for, that's what we solicit input on, and then that'd be our basis for whether or not we move forward on these other options. And then if there is support for it, then it would be, do you keep the one or do you build a new facility? And those have separate costs involved. So anyway, that was my suggestion on how to maybe organize a discussion. Appreciate you indulging me.
Emily? Your thoughts and I guess your presentation before we start to string out a lot of questions?
I would say it's a lot of kind of what we previously spoke about 2 months ago in regards to there's options for keeping the structure and there's also options for reimagining the space. We have worked to tidy up the museum and we're ready in just a couple weeks to be able to offer that as a meeting space and try to help determine what's the need, what's the interest in the local area. Of course, it's a smaller space. The park building would offer a larger space. Reusing the building, you know, it speaks to the town being a little bit more maybe environmentally friendly and rehabbing something that we currently have existing versus tearing it down and building new. When you are doing cost comparison, I think how Marchant laid this out, looking at his document, we also would need to consider what requirements we would need to meet for DEQ on if there's any land disturbances. That's the only thing here that I'm seeing, just to put that out there, that would be a bigger cost that we would need to look at. But that's in any one of these scenarios, because even the reuse of the building, if we're talking about an on-site parking plan, we will need to keep that in mind. If we're disturbing any land, whether it's putting gravel in, we need to keep that portion in mind for stormwater. Was there a question? No. Okay. When it comes to the current need or the current interest, I'll speak to it every year. We do get a couple calls if the building is open or available, if they could rent the park. I would say that keeping a building that is enclosed and has a door, locking door, would allow us to be able to rent the building for birthday parties, meeting hall for small groups, nonprofits, a lot easier than the pavilion aspect would. If you do an open air pavilion, then we're gonna have to start navigating, do you kick somebody out if they're there having a picnic with their family under the pavilion because this other group came in and rented it? So I think there's some options there for consideration on the style of building, and ultimately, what do you want to see the pavilion function as? Is it simply a covering over the space so that it allows people to enjoy the space in a more passive way? Or are you actually going to be looking at renting that pavilion out as well? I think that's a big question we also would need to answer. I don't foresee that doing a pavilion and bathrooms. I don't foresee us doing a lot of rentals. We can certainly talk to the county and see what they do at Long Park, how they manage that, but just at a quick off the cusp thinking about it, how do we turn away kids that are playing at the playground and their families who are sitting under the pavilion because we have a rental, you know? And that starts making a little bit of an exclusivity for that space. And if our goal is always to be open and free for use and a nice passive area, then having a rental, it would be better housed in a building that's completely enclosed under lock and key so that we can control that. In the memo I presented, I included some ideas, very brief, on if you do have a staff member, maybe there are monthly programs, you know, maybe that's something in coordination with the community garden that Nadia brings in a little class for the kids on planting or teaching about, you know, fruits and vegetables. So you can blend some of the items we already have ongoing up there. But I don't foresee us doing, at least not at this point, I don't foresee us doing a full-blown monthly programming for toddlers or other youth in our community that's a set standard every week. I don't see that type of programming happening. The county offers that at some of their other parks. They have the funding and the resources right now to do so. I don't think we're at that point.
Emily, you and Mr. Mayor, is that okay? You had meant your item 5, 6, and 7, or no, 7's are exit and access. Is that just doing a
That
better
was just in
delineation?
general to kind of keep in mind. So our current entry access point right off of Washington Street for the main structure is a little bit narrower. I think we would want to investigate making sure that 2 cars could pass. So somebody coming in, somebody coming out on both of our entry or exit points. Since the parking lot and the main driveway are not connected to one another, I don't think that we could do any kind of like loop trafficking at this time unless we added gravel and maybe they enter the main driveway and go over to the parking lot. But one of the things I just want us to keep in mind is once we get more vehicles on site, there are kids who they play at the playground, but they also run down in the grass and they'll, play with balls and stuff down there. So just keeping in mind what areas are being used for children free roaming and running around.
And then the park security and
So park security, again, no matter what we do here, I think we need to keep in consideration and have a discussion with our chief on the bathrooms. If we have exterior bathrooms, it's fine to have them have an automatic lock and we set a time and it goes off at that point and it is locked. But, is this something that, of course, our officers are already driving by each day and each night, keeping eyes on it, but ensuring that the structure stays safe. If it's putting cameras on the outside, having the door codes like we have down here at Town Hall, having something of that similar nature being installed over there, what that would look like cost-wise. And then for a pavilion, is there concern of safety and security? If it's an open-air pavilion, does it attract any kind of different, I don't want to say...
Element?
Element, yeah, thank you. Does it attract a different element in the night hours that we aren't currently thinking about? This does back up to a lot of residents, so we need to keep that in mind as well.
I'm having flashbacks to the light discussion at the park.
Yes, which way are the lights on the house pointing? So a lot of things to consider, a lot of things to discuss through. There's not an easy decision for you guys to make. You guys definitely have a lot to consider.
Anybody have any questions? I have one question. Are we looking at making this a year-round facility?
So I think that's another great question to add on there. So
That determines whether you need to close in a facility or something of that
Yes.
sort.
So one of the discussions that I actually had with Council Member Ramirez this past week was when we were going through the packet materials, we were talking about if you keep the structure, what could we use it for in the winter? One of the things that Tracy Lynn and I talked about a year ago was, are you able to continue our farmers market in a fashion that it could be a winter market? And would you be able to have a certain number of vendors in the structure and facilitate a smaller scale market? We ultimately could house our Christmas event down there. It's really fun down here, and this is what we're used to, a nice outdoor event with a Christmas tree, but you have a couple options we could do in the winter, cooler months down there. If you kept the building, again, you could have the indoor meeting space that's rentable, but if you do the open air pavilion, I think we're restricted. We're not looking, I don't think we're looking to put an ice skating rink in or anything to that scale. So I don't think that it would be as useful or utilized as much in the winter months.
Yeah, the question with, if we go with like an open air pavilion, maybe if we do want to make it a year round, we can do similar to what they do at what's the brewery right outside of town there? Farm Brewery, where you have the roll-up doors and you can still open it up, but you can put it down with some type of industrial heating, cooling elements if they're necessary to heat that building up and make it a closed-in facility during the winter times or something like that. That's an idea. But then, of course, you're also adding the maintenance associated with it of making sure that somebody's checking it out to make sure no one's fooling around with the doors. And so other added responsibilities with that, but it is at least a concept to maybe give this an option and give us an option for making this a generalized building where you can do both at the same time.
So the master plan had sort of facilitated both. You could have both. I think in this instance, if it's one prefer over the other, then I think it would be size and scale. If you kept the building and did a pavilion, you'd probably not have enough space to do, it would be a smaller pavilion, probably like something that they do out in the Plains Park out there. So that's a question of scale too, if one versus the other. Would that be a fair assessment? Yeah, it's just how you would use that. So that was a suggestion. If we wanted to go after one option in lieu of the building, you could use that site for it, outline the building, and then have a larger facility. But the one in Lewis put in there is fairly basic. I think we would want to dress it up a little bit. It was very utilitarian, mention a little bit more, but so Mr. Mayor, sort of circling back, is it helpful for the council just to start at, do we want, other than the facilities we already have, do we want to put out in a flyer or something like that? Do we want to try to solicit comment on a meeting space or some sort of civic, or you can call it whatever we want. I think this called it the Park Services Building. Whatever name we come up with, do we want to vet the option? Because that's a lot of the feedback when I've talked to folks about it. It's what's the plan, what's the vision, what do you want to use it for? If we can check in on that, it's still the status quo. How do we do that? What is the timeline for that? Would we get a likely good response? So that's what I pose. Staff, any thoughts on trying to solicit?
I would just ask council to think through what is a satisfactory answer. So we can certainly solicit. We've sent stuff out before. We can do postcards. We can get things in mailboxes. I would highly encourage, if this is a route we take, that you guys come to the farmers market. It meets every week, and determine, are you speaking with citizens? Are they writing down names and addresses in support or against? What makes it a valuable outreach? So at what point are we going to be satisfied with the outreach we've done? So I would just want us to think through that before we break for the discussion.
I would also highly suggest that we together come up with the verbiage on how we're asking that, so that it is consistent and it's not bipartisan to whatever it is that we might feel, so that we're getting a true viewpoint of what our neighbors want.
I absolutely agree. I think that the language and the information going out could be put on a flyer that everybody has access to. We can have them so that if you wish to go out and canvass your neighborhood or the entirety of the town, you may do so, but that the information being shared is same across the board. We can come up with a system for our residents to give feedback, whether that's signing a document, whether it be a petition kind of sheet, and they write in their name, their address, and a signature, or whether that's an online system that they respond. I think we need to have multiple approaches to it, because we do need to meet our residents where they're at. Not everybody wants to use the website and submit something online. They prefer a paper signature too.
Continue on.
So, and just with our experiences from past surveys, door knocking, walking our neighborhoods, QR codes, that seemed to be the most valuable and the highest response. So taking it upon ourselves to do that and giving ourselves a timeline.
Yes.
Because I feel like we're all really wanting to make a decision and move forward.
Yes. So let's look
we-
at a calendar. Go ahead.
Can we get an idea of the cost of the two options, the pavilion as opposed to the meeting room, meeting space?
So we sort of have, give me a second to pull that up.
I mean, I can see here based, in terms of operation, definitely the closed space is going to cost us more as a town to maintain, right? And to be honest, I don't know how much need there is for a meeting space in comparison to a pavilion, but I guess we'll allow the residents to, through surveys, what have you, to let us know what their preferences are.
One comment I will say is this estimate was given when I was actually in the acting position, so I didn't meet with the contractor. One of the things he did state was the price you're seeing is if you want to use it, make it usable. But if we start renting the space out, that could drive up the cost because you will have to meet DEQ requirements. So that wasn't part of the price that you see in front of you because we didn't go that far
If
into
you
that.
refer to packet page 25, and again, this is one quote that was briefly discussed and received when Roberta was in the acting role so that we could keep this discussion moving. So if you refer to this, you'll see what was addressed. We gave the contractor the structural report that we received. He reviewed it. He also is very familiar with this building and has been the primary contractor we have used for all of our repairs we've needed in the last recent years. So on the bottom of packet page 26, you'll see a estimated cost. Again, that was Roberto going through. This is just working on repairs. And then there is additional cost to add in the new bathrooms, HVAC unit, and some other repairs, maintenance in general that need to be made. But again, this is not full ADA accessibility, so that's about $122,000. Then you have comments here on the bottom of page 27, and there's the estimated new building pavilion parking ADA bathhouse would be $200,000. And then when you talk about adding in the demolition there, you would be looking at $235,000.
Okay, so with the first option, we need to add 45,000 plus 122.4. So we're looking at 167,400. Right?
That is how I read it, correct? Yes.
And there are other costs specific.
And when you
Yes,
say
it-
first option, you mean off of the sheet that?
No. On packet page 25
Okay.
to 27, that's the taking that structural report and just working immediately on the repairs in the basement, because that is the main 45,000 is just getting that level of detail taken care of. The additional monies would be allocated for that bathroom, which provides full exterior access, the appropriate ADA ramp accessibility to that, and then additional flooring fixes, painting of the outside, roof repairs, HVAC unit. And that's just kind of the groundwork. That's just starting.
You good? Okay, Joe?
Good.
Well, okay. So I think these costs are, I don't know, in my mind, they're
Very low.
dubious.
I feel they're very low.
Well, if you go back and look at the original estimates that was done, that were done by Simpoetica, I think it was Simpoetica.
Yeah.
There are a number of soft costs and add-ons that are not in this number. Now, you're going to have to do an RFP. There's no way we're going to do a sole source for this. And if you do an RFP, you're going to have to account for contingency, other soft costs, profit, all of those elements that are part of a bid, right? So if you look at Simpoetica's report, those numbers were anywhere from 50 to 60% add-on to what their bottom line number was. And I don't remember what the amount was back then. It's something you sent us over the weekend. Those are probably 2014, 2015 dollars. So I don't see that number going down. from 2015 to redo the building. I see those numbers only going up, given inflation and other pressures, material pressures, and all the other things that we're experiencing now. So I think those numbers are very dubious at best. So we're really kind of like apples to oranges here, in my mind. So I would need to see what those numbers would be like. So an RFP would be very helpful. And finally, we have a sense of what the operation and maintenance costs might be. And I will concur that if you have a closed structure, it's likely like a house, because it's really a house, it's likely going to be more expensive on the operating and maintenance costs over the long term compared to a pavilion or something of that nature. So it seems to me we need to lay out exactly the function, as we've talked about for the last few months. What are the functions? Once we figure that out, we can do a matrix, right, of different criteria and try to see what those criteria are comparing these two options, if in fact that's what we want to do. So
Yeah. Well, if we reach over to our real estate expert here, you do have the average cost per square foot for residential and for commercial. We would have to make this a commercial building. And the differences between residential and commercial are probably, what, a factor of 1.2 or 1.5? Do you know?
I don't know right off the cuff, but I can
But it's going to be at
utilize
least,
my resource.
yeah,
100%.
it's probably going to be at least 150% more than what residential is for a commercial, right?
Well, I know that we're going through the other demolition permits. The person offering the applicant time was quoting, and I've heard this before, 155 a square foot. So 155 times, the building's 1,877 square feet, it's about 290,000 for new construction. So,
like similar.
yeah, or something less. Yeah, replacement in kind.
We're talking replacement in kind, not something different.
Correct. And then the other point is the other cost that's not there is when Cookies and Cream got picked up. So the other house that's there is now Cookies and Cream. They opened it up. So here, I guess the question would be, is this is just repairing it as is. Would we want to do anything else to the building to open it up to make it a more usable? Because right now you have the old bedrooms and you have sort of the meeting space and there's other things that's done. So if we want to get the most bang for our buck, will we need to do some sort of interior, outline, which
And that could be a big structural issue.
the drawings to do that, that's the other one where they sort of remove some of those interior walls, and that is a cost that wasn't part of the original estimate. So
Yeah, if you open up the building, which I think would probably be the best option, you're looking at completely replacing the roof and putting in support structure.
yeah, the roof was replaced. Oh, the framing too, or just I think the roof was replaced.
The roof was just covered.
Yeah, but you're still looking at the older framing, and so you would probably have to replace everything so you can get, what do they call it, manufacturing lumber in there so that you can get an extent of 20 feet spans and stuff like that.
Yeah, they had to do a
Manufactured lumber.
glue lam beam. They had
Yeah.
to come in and put the glue lam
Laminated
beam in.
beam? Yeah.
So and then
Yeah, exactly.
load.
so
My big concern with this building is the unforeseens. Means and methods are very important. When you look at and read the report, and you should read it, the underground portion, the basement, the CMU walls, everything's ultimately undermined. And some of the things they're talking about is excavating and replacing the strips, the concrete strips, and then rebuilding with poured concrete. That's not a small undertaking. And that's not even knowing what the other unforeseen conditions may be. Those are just a couple examples of what can get quite costly in my mind.
What, you mean like drainage? They got to put in French drains and everything else. They got to go full blown with a new foundation.
And given a maintenance plan, which hopefully we're going to be developing soon, that would just be another in an inventory of additional costs. And is there a demand for that? I don't know.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, Tracy.
No, I was just going to say, and I will say that sometimes, most often, it is more expensive to redo or rehab an existing structure than it is to build from scratch.
Not saying we can't do it.
I'm not saying we can't do it, I'm just saying that that's.
but the cost
The cost is
has to
heavy.
be better
So-
understood.
A good segue, and I'll give, so, Tracy, when you mentioned bipartisan earlier, that was sort of directed at me, and was that directed at me?
Yeah.
Okay. So you sort of you looked at Joe and me and sort of went bipartisan.
No,
I'm
not
like,
at all.
So here's the challenge, and here's my 2 cents pitch beat on the ARB. I get a lot of feedback about my passion for these buildings. But remember, what I do from the job that I work in on a day-to-day basis is based on ordinances and policies. So absent a cost, I think we've lost a lot of our building stock due to maintenance and lack of, and there's a general sort of attitude toward that effort. And so you see the other communities, you've created that value, and it's snowballed over time. We've just struggled to get the investment, and a lot of the buildings have just gone too far gone. Now, I look at the 2 examples that we have here, far worse condition, but we were able to we sort of led the way. And when I've referenced that example with the private sector, I've always gotten the pushback saying, well, the town was able to do it, we don't hear the government say this, but they were able to do it cheaper or able to manage it differently. I'm not sure entirely what that is. But we set the example, and we've had these buildings rented since day one. Now, and this is something Joe and I talked about today, whether these buildings generate enough revenue to offset that investment is still not clear. Something we constantly challenge, but in reference to the other properties that we own, it's a unique structure. There's not many of them, and we've demonstrated how we can pick one up and move it and reuse it. So it's exciting to me that we could think outside the box, go through our due diligence, but do something really creative and do something that can meet all the meet our ordinances, meet our policies, meet our service demands, meet our needs of the community. Just be able to capitalize on that in this time. We've been doing this for 15 years. And so one thing I've talked about too is the ARB side is that setting the example, staying ahead of it. I think if we need to be being deliberate, I think makes sense. I do have concerns if we do go the demo route, people are going to be watching, and we have to be clear why. As a public service, maybe that's not the most appropriate sort of thing. But I appreciate everyone going through the due diligence and going through the exercise. But as I sit here, I would hope that we not have to go through another 3 to 6 years to make some sort of decision that's on it. So it's exciting to be able to revisit it. I think it's exciting to look at our options. I know we've asked a lot of staff to do things right now with all the different projects that we're managing. The idea of doing something in the interim would be a way to provide that service faster. But if it comes at an exorbitant cost, that's fine. We're always going to get the arguments about higher costs. It's unfortunate, but it's what does the value become? What is the value for keeping these things and really do an example of it? So that's just some thoughts I have about beyond just the cost is the value and what these mean to the community. And if it does mean a higher cost, is there a reasonable range with which to be able to meet all those policies and expectations about our historic district and our historic structures. So that's my pitch, my soapbox. Thank you.
Joe?
Okay, so let's go back, because when Sympoetica was doing this, one of the questions I raised is, why are we putting our thumb on the scale and having these buildings there in the first place? I mean, if you're going to consider the function, the form follows the function, right? So if you're going to consider what do you want at the park, why wouldn't you start from scratch and figure out, is the building there now, is that really something that you would envision for a park? My thought would be tabula rasa, as I said, and you start from scratch and figure out exactly and build it up from there. So I think we're missing the boat by not doing that. I think we're almost predetermining what's going to come out of that study in some ways. So that's my pitch. And the other thing is, lastly, I mean, other structures have been taken down. I mean, I was on the council when we did move that house. We came up with a very good solution, and it worked out well. I mean, we can also make an effort to do that. We can sell that structure. We can harvest. We can do whatever that needs to be done. If, in fact, the council decides they would like to have a pavilion rather than the house. But again, I think it has to go back to function and what exactly do you want to be part of this park and build it up from there. And again, this, in my mind, it seems to prejudice a decision by having those in there as a baseline. And that, to me, it seemed that they were there as a baseline. Now, we did get to a situation on another alternative at the end where those houses were gone, but that wasn't selected for whatever reason, I don't remember. But those houses were always there in the baseline, and that seems, in my mind, to prejudice an outcome.
Well, I was on the ARB at that point, so you know exactly what I was going to be saying for the ARB, right? It's historic. You don't get rid of it. Now I'm in another position, so I gotta sit there and evaluate and assess what the costs are, as well as historic value, as well as everything else. Yeah. And that's kind of where you're coming from too, Marchant, with your professional experience. The way you put it, boy, that would have been a great project to submit for VML to get an award for the community effort and everything, and keeping the history of the town and everything like that. But we really do got to identify, what the function is, what fits there, and whether we just got to move that direction or stay historic.
Sorry, Joe, you said the two buildings came down and it came back?
No, they were in
One of the
They were
proposals.
in the baseline.
The two buildings, yeah.
Yeah. And we moved one. I guess that was a compromise. I don't.
Yeah, that was a compromise plan. So I guess I would, not to debate back and forth, but I appreciate the discussion. I wouldn't say prejudice. My point of bringing all this up is that it's not solely just the cost. There's other factors that I think come into play when we evaluate what to do with it. Obviously the plan, our comprehensive plan is just as old as almost older than ours. So we're dealing with multiple documents that are there, but I have to, being the liaison, I have to advocate for that element, and that's what we're doing, and so look forward to the discussion. But to circle back, Mr. Mayor, the direction is that, Tracy Lynn, to your suggestion, if we do some sort of outreach, it's just that, I guess we discuss what those elements are. That's sort of just as a matter of fact. Here's function, here's the resource, here's the. So anyway, something we can talk about, but maybe we talk more about that, about what those elements need to be, and I'd be happy to.
And because I know that there are opposite opinions, I feel like having a common ground in how we approach the community is important.
Yeah.
So that we can discuss it if asked, but at the end of the day, they get to input without prejudice, yes.
Well, who wants to bang heads and come up with the common questions? I know Marchant probably wants to participate in
I
that.
think Solomon should be part of that.
I was going to say, I will participate 100%.
Okay.
Did you say Solomon?
Is that, do you feel that's a good cross? I'll let Alexander answer. Do you feel that's a good cross, having a vice mayor and Marchant and the town manager come up with
I do.
what a good set of questions would be to ask our constituents?
And I'm assuming we're going to get an opportunity to review it and chime in, right? Or,
100%
Yeah.
before we publish it, yes.
Okay.
Okay, timeframes. What looks free?
As we said 2 months ago, we want to move with a purpose, not necessarily too quickly because you want to do it.
I am going to lean on the town manager because this interferes with her regular schedule. So,
Now
timeframe,
she's
town
got new
manager.
people to help her.
Let me pull up my calendar. I'll sign this one.
There you go.
Are we looking to have an informational flyer ready at our May meeting? You guys discuss it that night?
Discuss it that night, have an agreed upon message, and then it could be prepared, printed, and handed out to the council on June 5th. and you guys could go from there? And then do you set a 1 month period and then we come back at July, discuss our results and go from there? Or do you want to do it sooner? I know that coming up on the end of the school year and summer can be busy.
My schedule's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Do you need more time?
So you're suggesting the May work session of the 29th, having the proposed questions for review
It would be on the 30th.
on the 30th?
Even I can work that out. That's fine.
Does 1 month give you too long enough to have a discussion, the three of us meet,
Yeah.
put something on
I
paper?
think that's reasonable.
Because, you know, feedback from us probably will be a
Yay or nay?
half hour or an hour of our time,
Don't
and we're
jinx it.
done.
Right.
Jinx it.
And then it comes to the meeting with our questions.
That's a good idea. Happy to do it. So the summer's gonna be a little crazy, but if we can get it done beforehand
Prior.
and then
Okay.
prior to that.
Okay, so
Come up with the questions when Marchand's not there, that's all.
Well, I may not be here when you have to implement it, so.
if you guys will coordinate between the two of you on when a good time to meet is, you guys feel free to, spearhead it, start the discussion. I'm happy to join in when you're ready. But you can send me over some times.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I'll put May 30th, questions come back to council. June 5th, the flyer or the informational piece that's going out would be finalized for handout, and then we can discuss on the 30th, but I would think give you guys a month to go out, speak to the constituents. We can do our posting and, necessary stuff here. And then come July's meeting, we should have some results to talk about.
You may get your wish. Be here for the July meeting. Mr. Mayor, just going to change gears for a second. The time that it's taking to do, is there anything pressing that needs to be done down there right now? Repair the sump pump, is there something that, clean the gutters out?
Let
Is
me
there-
review through the structural report that
Okay.
was given, and then let me actually put eyes on it
Okay.
with Matt, who is visiting the property, weekly. Let me see what's going on, and then I'll follow up with you.
Council okay with that? Just, is there some easy fixes that we can do that doesn't require too much time and effort?
We do have it roped off for safety right in the back.
For the tree, is it for the tree?
There's a tree issue in the back, so that's what's currently roped off there. We should get our last quote in here this week and be able to move forward on taking care of that tree issue.
Okay, good. I just want to make another comment real quick. It seems to me that the common thread here is a need for parking, to develop parking. So regardless of what the decision is, it might drive the size of the parking, I'm not sure. Depending on what the uses are, but we certainly have an issue that has to be dealt with.
Yeah, I see that parking lot needing to be doubled.
So the design did have much more. I think it had like 28 spaces, and it was all in the front. It was sort of double. You could park in and head in on either side, and it came in from the
Add that to your list.
the entrance in front of the park building, and then came around.
Is that the master plan?
That was in the master plan.
50, what I saw earlier.
Was it 50?
50,
Okay.
yeah.
I thought it was 20 something, but yeah, it's a challenge. It's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, even present day on the weekends, the parking lot fills
Yeah.
up.
So the suggestion I'm sorry, go ahead.
Now, I was just going to ask, so some of the ideas for parking would be something to reduce our stormwater requirement limits, right? And we'd be
Yeah.
looking at that.
Oh, ultimately?
Yeah.
Oh, in the end, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We don't want to get pushed into a
And,
situation.
and cost savings, I don't want to get asphalt on there or anything
Well,
like that.
Topography too, everything drains. That's the highest point in Haymarket, by the way. It drains, you don't want to drain it toward the residents, you don't want it draining toward the front, but the suggestion about the on-site parking plan is, do we put behind the playground in front of the garage? Do we put wheel stops in there? It's sort of, I guess people park there already. Is there something we could do to demarcate spaces up there that doesn't require any more gravel or anything like that. That was the point of this suggestion, was not necessarily park on the other side in front of the house, but is there opportunities behind there that we could designate some sort of parking?
I think when we regroup in July and we have our conversation on feedback, we could have an interim plan. And if that means additional wheel stops or appropriately sized wheel stops in the main part or parking signs, if there's a little bit more of an obvious method to the madness when it comes to the parking up there, we could work to achieve
That was
that.
that was the point of this suggestion. So.
We'll buy Matt one of those paint wheels, and he can go out there and spray paint,
Chalk it.
put the spray paint in with
You know, he
the
does
handle.
that about every other week in front of Cupcake Kevin's, so he's very familiar
that's
with
right.
the process. He has some very nice straight lines that he puts out there.
Yeah, Alexander, did you have some questions?
Yes, the projected operating cost that I see here, is that to operate and maintain to operate, not maintain the closed space?
Yes, that is just strictly thinking through operational costs for the event meeting space at kind of a bare bones type situation.
And do we have a similar estimate for a pavilion?
Not at this time. We can certainly get one. I think what we would be looking at there is really just cleaning cost for the operations of it.
Okay.
So if that's a weekly spray down, a monthly, cleaning in that nature, because I would not foresee that we're renting that pavilion space, not unless you have a way to close it off to the public.
Now, if we go with the pavilion option, would the bathrooms be open all the time to the public?
They would be open during the day, so that would be that cleaning, coming in
Yeah.
and having it. Ideally, the bathroom is something that somebody just goes in there and sprays down, and it's a very industrial style cleaning of the restrooms.
And that was included in the closed.
That was not included in
Oh,
the
okay.
closed. The cleaning in the closed was simply looking at the entirety of the structure, not the
Bathroom
exterior
maintenance.
bathroom.
Okay.
But we can add that in there. We'll have to get some quotes on that because I don't believe the current cleaning service we have, I don't think I would ask them in the sense that that's not their specialty. I think this is more something you need to think through, like when a Porta-John company comes in and they're spraying down their units, that's the type of cleaning we would
Yep.
need for these bathrooms.
And they probably offer a service
I
for
think they
outside
do.
bathrooms.
So we can get that quote of what that would look like.
Now, one of the things I'm thinking is, if it were an exterior kind of facility, would those bathrooms then have to be seasonal? I mean, that's
Yes.
another consideration,
Not unless you add,
right?
well, I mean.
What, you don't want any broken frozen pipes?
Really hot.
No, I think bathrooms would need to be year-round. People use the
Yeah.
park
It
year-round.
would,
Yeah.
It'd be year-round.
you could put a year-round bathroom, it just would not be climate controlled, it would be properly vented. That would be the key.
That's a
And-
very important thing to do.
Yeah.
And the pipes would be heavily insulated, so.
Well, it also seems to me that we're touching and we're dancing around the use policy,
Yep.
and that's something that really has to be thought through as well.
Yep.
I mean, is this, first come, first served? Is it reserved? Is it town residents only? Is it, town and county or Gainesville? Whatever the case may
You
be.
have that for both structures, whether you do interior,
Interior, yeah.
exterior, I think, not interior, exterior. The closed structure or an open structure, right now I just don't see how we would, for lack of a better word, police a open structure rental system.
Okay, fine, but you'll figure it out. And then the last thing is the materials. I mean, because you're sitting here thinking about a house that could get renovated. Really what we're talking about is a house, and which in all likelihood would require a very strict maintenance effort, like we should be doing elsewhere, that hopefully we're gonna start doing and managing, versus a new facility that could be built with materials that are less problematic. So there are some other considerations there when we start to do a comparison, I would think.
Yep.
Just a thought.
I think, the use policy, I think it's a detail we can generally talk about now, but this is something I think will be organic over time. The only thing on reservation, I think the park down in the plains, they put like they have a board that says reserved at this time, but you're right, you would have to, if they refuse to leave, then you would have to have some sort of, someone come in. Yeah. Appreciate everyone having the discussion. So.
Okay. Emily, you pretty much know what the directive is then?
Clear as mud. Yes, I got the instructions. We're good.
Okay, everyone finished with their comments? Okay, let's move on then. Town maintenance position?
Yes, so one of the discussion points that we had at our last meeting was to come back with some offset numbers. So what I did is I pulled what was readily available and that I could without a doubt confirm that this would be taken over by the maintenance position. And so I've presented here, we're on packet page 32. Get my screen to zoom better. I've presented some numbers here for you. So these are offsets that upfront automatically I know would be assigned over to the maintenance position. So banner replacement, again, this is done 8 times a year. I found the average cost per job is $1,000, $1,100. And we spend approximately 10 grand on this. One of the things I want to note on the banner replacement is that we don't consistently have a quality of service that it stays up, it looks nice. We are having to have them either come back in or we just don't end up putting those banners that fall. So with this, if we called them back every time that banners came off and we needed to put them back up, this number would be higher. Inclement weather preparations at town properties. So right now, per snow event, we're paying between $400 and $600 to do this. That includes salting of our parking lots and sidewalk walkways appropriately on our town-owned properties. So keeping in mind, we do lease out portions of this building as well as other buildings on our property. So it is important that we prepare for the weather, not only for our staff, but the other staff that's on site and the police department. So this is something that we would be able to accomplish in-house. Watering our street planters and our trees. So $75 a visit. I calculated that they come on average 2 to 3 times a week during the summer. We've had weeks they come every single day depending on the weather that we have. And again, this is looking at the summer season being roughly May until October when we have some of that hot weather that we need everything to be watered. So that's about $4,500 there. General plumbing items. These are just small plumbing tasks that a handyman could do. Things that we're not having to call in somebody. So the average job cost there was $274 when we did have to call somebody in. That's replacing the handle on the toilet that no longer works. It's sticking. It's the general little leak under the kitchen faucet, things like that. HVAC maintenance service. So this is an annual cost that we calculated. This is based on the general switching out the filters, typical maintenance of those systems. And then I've added up here, I spelled out how I did the calculations so that it made sense because some of them were the annual costs and some were the average job costs. So just these 5 items alone, we're looking at roughly offset of $18,000. I know that there will be more offsets. It's a matter of getting the position fully funded and being able to, over time, track that offset, track the different items. We're no longer having to call contractors in to complete the work. So I think it will also show in the quality of our buildings and our structures. I know that we want to assign quantitative numbers to that, and we'll work to do that over time, but I think you'll also see a better quality in our property. So that's what I have to add for this. I have added a couple just minor items on the job description as we talked previously. I added on there the valid Virginia driver's license requirement because we do have a town maintenance vehicle that needs to be operated. And then I also added on here the development of asset inventory for town-owned property. So that is a hot button item, and we hope to accomplish that within the first several months of this position being fully funded. So I'm happy to take any questions if you guys have any questions at this time. And Roberto can also talk to some of the cost questions as well.
You want to let Joe go first? Joe?
No,
You can leave this one.
no, I'm not
I
going
love
to.
the other one.
Okay, so, of course, there's offsets to the offsets. Some of it has to do with equipment, right? And like doing the banners, I mean, he's going to need some kind of equipment and some other kind of training for some of these functions, I would think.
For some of them, yes. So when we look at it, generally speaking, we don't have a ladder that is, tall enough to reach some of the buildings and some of the things that we need to be able to have anyway. So whether it's him doing the replacements or not, those are some of the investments we do need to make. So yes, there will be offsets to the offsets in the first year. It could be, again, on a cycle, depending on how long the equipment lasts for. Of course, we would make sure appropriate training on the equipment was done, and then kept through the duration of the employment of that individual.
Yeah, I should have started by saying thank you for doing this, because this is very helpful. This is what we asked for at the last meeting, to kind of get a sense of where some of the savings might be. And I agree, as the position matures, you'll get a better sense by keeping track of some of the other savings that I hope we're going to see, and I think we will.
I think we will.
So
One-
my question is, so for next week, you're looking for us to weigh in on this, or were you looking for direction tonight?
I'm looking if there's any additional items that I can answer tonight, or if I need to come back to you next week on any finalized questions, concerns. So I would like for that to happen tonight. And then next week, I would look for council to give a directive on our next steps, whether that is advertising it with a higher date of July 1, advertise with a higher date sooner, or not to proceed with the position.
Okay, so then if that's the case, can you give me, or can Roberto get a cost for this fiscal year, the incremental cost going full-time for this position, say effective, I don't know, May 2nd?
Keep in mind, I will need to fully advertise this position, go through an interview process,
Right.
and do the hiring. So I think May 15th would be a realistic.
Well, are you saying you're going to go through the hiring process first before you go full-time? Or are you looking to use who's there now full-time?
I'm looking to properly advertise,
Okay,
put the
fine.
position out there, receive different resumes in, applications, and go through an interview process and hire.
Thank you for the clarity.
You're welcome.
That's perfect. Okay, so then maybe you can give us a number from the 15th on, just for the rest of this fiscal year, what that incremental cost is. And could we also get the fully loaded costs for the full-time position? Worst case scenario.
Full family plan.
Sorry.
Full family plan,
benefits
worst
and all
case
that.
scenario.
Last we met was about 70,
Yeah, well,
low 70s, yeah.
we can always talk about it on Wednesday if you'd like, but it would be helpful.
Okay. Marchant?
Emily, is there a
you
way
done?
to put a cost on your time that will be opened up?
That's a savings.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Is that a way to, is that a very useful number to have in part of considering this, or we
I can
don't
I
spend a
can
lot
look
of
back
time?
at I can look back at some of the timesheets and how I tracked it, but I will be honest with you guys. Most of the time, when it comes to discussion with contractors, getting quotes, calling people, that stuff, I flagged it under administration. So I could give you a rough number of how many hours a week I spend doing some of this versus, what this person would come in and do for me. I can tell you event-wise that it has taken a lot off of my plate. There's a lot of hours leading up to events, easily 10 hours for our smaller events. For Haymarket Day, I'd say easily a good 20 hours that I'm not having to go out there and do the physical work of preparing for the event. I'm able to better reallocate my time inside to advertisements, vendor discussions, talking to the public as they come in and call. So
no need to do the math on it. If there was a 10%, 15%, I don't know if there was a ballpark that came to mind, but I feel like there's some intangible sort of savings to accessibility. You have someone that you don't have to wait to call someone in. So I don't know how we put a value on that, but it seems like that would have some value on that.
I think absolutely you can. And one of the great benefits that we've noticed just in having this as a part-time position is our tenants have somebody who they feel very comfortable speaking with directly, flagging this person down in the parking lot when they see them, and knowing that they have someone they can approach. And they can always come in and talk to us, but it's a quicker, hey, so-and-so, can you come talk with me? And he goes in, he has the discussion, comes to us. And so it's a little bit more streamlined even in that. And they have somebody they know they can approach easily.
We saw that yesterday at Farmers Market.
Oh, yes. Farmers Market, quite a nice offset there as well.
So this relationship building.
Yes, the relationship. So you'll
Talking about events manager, or are we talking about
We're
maintenance?
talking maintenance.
maintenance. Yes. So the current person who fills the maintenance position, we have him do a good amount of setup and prep work on a Friday for our farmers market. But then he takes the time to come in and do some Sunday hours with us as well and provide just general support staff at our market. It's not every market, but yesterday was our first one. So it was nice to have some of the kinks worked out there. But a lot of our vendors recognize him, and it was a great, hey, how are you? They felt, again, comfortable that they could approach this person. It was a familiar face. So all good things to see.
Be good and bad when they want to talk to you all day. I have one more follow-up. if that's okay.
No, wait.
The extent that we describe sidewalk maintenance, we talk generally in the intro, we talk about town buildings and surrounding property. Is there any sense that we need to emphasize more the sidewalks as well? We talk about snow clearing and things like that, but just general, I don't know how to categorize or describe that. Basically, someone that's walking the streets and just doing general checks and those sorts of things. Is it worth more describing what that work would entail?
So I think I see it as a twofold answer. I would describe it as general streetscape maintenance because it's not just walking the sidewalk and looking at the sidewalk. It's walking our streetscape, checking our planters, our benches, our light poles, our banners, flags, the list goes on. Checking that our landscape services have done their contracted work appropriately. The sidewalk maintenance portion of it, that's going to be walking the sidewalks, identifying the issues, identifying the needs for repair, setting a priority level, and then working with a contractor to accomplish that work. So,
Do you think we've captured enough of that in
I
here
do.
that we don't have to say it sort
I
of
do.
more?
I don't want to dive too deep into detail on the job description. I think that we have a level of detail that's appropriate for the position and what we need currently.
Can I make one suggestion for you?
Yes, you may.
So in the intro, maybe just say for all town buildings, surrounding property, and town streetscape, just put streetscape in there generally. Is that enough? This is on.
Certainly, I can add that.
Okay. It just sort of sets the expectation. It's not just property, it's the infrastructure as well. So, thank you for walking me through that. It's going to be a significant amount of this time.
So if I'm hearing correctly, we're talking a lot of aesthetic work too, right? So that means it's kind of like tourism money that we're basically using?
Absolutely.
Oh, never mind.
I think you make a great
gloves
point.
are off.
We absolutely.
Now the gloves are
Oh, any
All right.
event, any event prepping,
Wait.
any event prepping
We'll
and
talk about that on
activity
Wednesday.
is tourism.
All right. No, she knows right.
Those flower baskets.
Yes, yes. Don't mess with her flower
Don't mess
baskets.
with them, flower baskets.
Anyway, all right, more in seriousness. So you're looking at the 15th as a potential start date. I've always been of the philosophy that if you have issues now and you're looking to start maybe working on that asset plan, is that something that who's currently there could give you more time right now? And can, I'm pretty sure the budget can absorb it, but I'll ask the treasurer if he can. Is that something you would like to do right now? Have him begin that process?
Absolutely.
And is there the availability of that individual to help us?
So what,
And-
bump the position up to 32 hours, which is the
Well,
max
yeah, but still,
part-time?
just increase the hours so we can get started.
I would have to check with him to see if if he has that availability in his schedule
Fine. That's my question.
to determine. So
This way you can get a jump start.
I'll put it this way. Let me follow up with you on that. Based on our decision next week, if it's a May 15th start or a July 1st start, then we can decide if we need to allocate additional part-time hours if it's July 1st instead of the 15th.
We'll talk.
That sounds great.
Sorry,
You're good now?
I'm good.
Didn't mean to cut you off before. Okay, Alexander.
Yeah, and suggestion with the description of the responsibilities, maybe we should use words such as to include but not limited to, and any other duties as assigned, something, that's right,
That's
something
right.
along that line.
It's right here.
Maybe. Is it already?
It should be on there.
Okay, perfect. I missed it.
Did I miss
Never
it?
mind.
We got it.
And going back to the savings here, HVAC maintenance service, if I'm not mistaken, based on my conversation, I believe this person would primarily be responsible for changing out the filters, right?
100% responsible.
Okay.
Yep.
So
And that's not just in this building, that is in all of the
rentals
buildings.
and buildings. Okay.
Museum and park as well.
Yep, and just to give you an idea, how many units do we have?
Inventory done, we'll know.
Yeah, well, I know we have more than 7 here, so, I mean, when you're looking at it, this is a major job. That's why the costs are so much on here, because if we do contract it out, and they end up saying, yeah, we changed 20 filters,
Exactly.
they're going, that's a big buck. They're going to charge us for it.
But we're still going to have additional HVAC-related maintenance. This is part of the maintenance, right? It's just one part.
Yeah, you still have the yearly cleaning
Yearly,
and all that.
Okay.
That will be done by a professional.
Pull and checks and all that.
Yeah.
And the task banner replacement, could that be done by one person safely?
So I've spoken with the current employee who is in this position, and he finds that yes, it would be something, it might take just a little bit longer than having the 2-person team that comes in and does it under our contracted services. But he feels that the quality of putting the banners up and the end result will be better, and that it would fully be accomplished with one person. We've investigated some different ladder options as well, some that are more of a, I think, Home Depot cage style, that you actually walk up more like stairs versus the ladder.
And the reason
Yeah.
I ask is that whenever, what I've noticed is two individuals.
Yes, and that's what the contractor sends, but prior to that team of 2, it was often done by one person.
Okay.
Yeah, but that would definitely identify the type of ladder we need. If it's a one person, you want to get a full spread leg
Yes.
ladder, not a lean ladder.
I would never propose that anybody lean a ladder against one of those light poles. I see them shake in the wind. No, I don't recommend it.
Yep.
So if you have any other follow-up questions after tonight that you think of, please give me a shout this week so we can go ahead and clarify it and have everything buttoned up for Monday night.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Thanks again, Emily.
Okay. Next item, our snapshot of the Conservation District rezoning. So I do not want to belabor this discussion tonight. I'm giving you the brief overview. I've included the entire packet from Prince William County. So a little background on this for your reference. Approximately 2 to 3 years ago, I do not recall the exact date, but 2 to 3 years ago, this interested party came into town hall and met with myself, the then town manager, Chris Kuhn. I believe Mayor sat in that meeting, and Bob Weir also sat in that meeting as our planning commission liaison. So we spoke with this interested party on what they were proposing. We did not give yays or nays. We rather had a neutral discussion. We asked questions, they explained to us, and we saw overview plans. At that time, they went back with their engineer and were working on further discussions. It was pretty much, we thought, tabled for quite some time, and then it's recently popped back up. So this is what they have submitted to Prince William County for their rezoning submission. This is their first submission. They have not at this time to date submitted anything to the town of Haymarket for the 4-acre property that's located within the town. We have received this via email notification for 1 mile review process, and also Supervisor Weir has notified us of this project. So if you flip to, let me figure out what page it is. In their narrative proposal, page 2 of their proposal, you will see their general project that they're planning. So again, 4 acres of this entire project is located in the town. It is in the conservation district. As you look at our town zoning map, it is the southwesternmost corner of the town property. It butts up near the railroad track crossing on Route 15, and there's a concrete business that is located in the county side. So it's right there. The county portion is 8.55 acres, and so in total they're proposing that 96 units of affordable housing would go in the 4-acre property that's within the town boundaries, and 144 units would be located on the county property. You can flip forward several pages to the site plan portion. I know that in your packets it printed out pretty small. We can make available additional overlay views for you that are larger. One of the easier ones to view is, and I'm sorry, I don't have a page number on this one, but this one? Okay. So as you look at this viewpoint that they've presented, building 5, 6, 7, and 8 are the ones that would be located in the town boundaries. Buildings 1 through 4, 9, and 10, the clubhouse and the tennis courts would be located in the county portion. Your access is not off of this immediate property onto Route 15, so it is not automatically here. They send the access through another parcel in the county and then snake it back over to Route 15. Again, that can be viewed in a different layout, which is in the site plan pages.
Do you want any comments on this?
So what I would like, my recommendation is we need to, as a town council, planning commission, and a whole, discuss this and provide our comments back to the county. So I would like comments, yes, and our comments should be received no later than May 5th for this. I'm going to reach out and let them know that we will be sending comments over. And so if you could bring your comments back for our meeting on Monday night so we can put them all together and send over at least, you know, the beginning of probably what's going to be a longer discussion with them.
And this is in a conservation easement? I mean, a conservation,
That's correct.
Zone.
That's what our portion of the property is zoned.
Sorry, Leo, just looking at this there's a procedural defect here.
Yes, there is.
And, I'm sorry, I'll let you.
No, you, please
It just
continue.
is-
I was,
right there.
I was
You're
affirming.
Procedural defect, how do you pitch a plan with 25 or what, 40% of your project? Not even, it seems disingenuous to, you know,
Well, we
To-
did have, that pre-meeting, Marchand, and let me tell you, it was revealed at that time to them that we do not have an R3 zoning district in our zoning text amendments. And we said, that's a complication right there. And so they understood right up front that they needed all these added procedures to go through, and none of that was done. That was all kind of done through the county, according to them. And from what I heard, they told the county that we were happy with whatever they did.
so I guess that's my point, is should we not just respond back and say it's, these projects should be in tandem? We have nothing from the applicant yet. We've received no information. There is currently no vision, or, Emily, you may have already done this already, but
That's the number one comment that's going
Yeah.
back to them.
it's just, and
Yeah.
because I would assume that without these buildings, their whole layout changes. So I guess they had the alternative. If it's not, they're trying to fix that.
Yes, so in your packet, you'll see that they have proposed an alternative option should the 4 acres not get approved in the town. It cuts off the page numbers, but it's C300. It is
Ah, got it. I see it.
4 pages from the back.
Yep.
104.
This one.
Oh, okay.
Yes, if you look in the bottom right corner, so they have that alternative site layout narrative.
So they have contemplated how they would access it that
Right.
way. Okay.
But I don't think that that should have stopped an application coming to the town, because the primary plan and the preferred plan is that they have 12 acres of affordable housing proposed.
Thank you. So that was the next question. None of these they don't carry over any of the affordables, or in the alternative plan, do they still have affordables or no?
Let me review further, but I do believe the entirety of the project is affordable
I
housing.
thought the whole thing.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
the
whole
whole thing
thing
was-
is
The whole thing is
affordable housing.
affordable,
Oh, wow. Okay.
again, defined.
Maybe it's just when you say affordable, you can go down the rabbit hole of percentages and AMI, and there's all kinds of stuff you can go down the rabbit hole with. So
And,
I think
and they
fine.
do outline that in their packet,
Okay.
what they are thinking through, what they are proposing, when it comes to affordable and what it means to everybody. So, again, I did not want to necessarily belabor every
No,
small
this is
detail of the project. You can read through their narrative. We can discuss further, but yes, we will be contacting the county and letting them know that we have yet to receive this application, and, very big issue right there in its own.
Yeah.
It's DOA.
Now, one thing I would like to discuss tonight on this while we have it, this may be belabored, but I feel it's necessary, especially since we do have the resource here. Chief, tell me the complications of managing a shared property with, where we own 4 of the buildings and the county own the rest, and who's going to end up being responsible for patrolling this, confusions associated with it, and everything else, especially since if you look at what they put in their impact statements of, they have one paragraph here for how they're going to deal with policing. Okay? So give me your experiences with problems in these situations.
Yes, sir. To ask for the conflicts, I can't count that many. It would be a lot of confusion. The fact that we're going to be the closest police agency to that property. So we're going to be responding to calls not even in our jurisdiction, but outside of our jurisdiction. And people won't know the difference. Quite frankly, we defer probably 10 calls away a day from people walking in and ringing the phone saying that they need police assistance, but they actually live in Prince William County, but in the Haymarket zip code. And that's, 21 square miles, give or take a few. We're talking about, a 10-acre parcel right across the street here. So it will be a lot of confusion and a lot of deconfliction. Not to mention when if we're working a case in there, everything is going to be coordinated with Prince William, but it will be a constant deconfliction of who's working what and who's doing what and how it flows. And what happens when we have a tenant dispute between a tenant in the town of Haymarket and a tenant in Prince William County? Who takes the lead on that? And that's just a small issue. The bigger issues of any major crimes, such as drugs or drug trafficking or human trafficking, that again causes deconfliction issues. Not to mention the sheer amount of people this is going to be a high density area. And when you bring high density affordable apartments or housing into an area, you bring a lot of the conflicts that come with living that close together. We've been negotiating issues all day, 10 townhouses apart in one of our subdivisions. I can't imagine being one wall apart with approximately 720 people. So there is going to be an immense amount of problematic issues having a split parcel between two jurisdictions sitting on the same plot. And then even if it became under one parcel, we are still going to see the residual effects because people are going to come into our area for the shopping or to commit illegal acts, and then we're going to have to go into that area to investigate it. And of course, we're already doing that a lot with the transient behavior that we have at the Sheets. When we have a crime there, it's usually not somebody that lives in the town of Haymarket. Now we're going to increase by 42% population, either inside of our jurisdiction or right next to our jurisdiction. Those are still going to be people that we have to police, that we have to deal with on a daily basis, whether they walk into our jurisdiction or whether we have to go into their jurisdiction because of a conflict, an issue, a property crime, a tenant dispute, parking issue, noise complaints, the list goes on. I see nothing but negative, quite frankly, for the police department and the resources that we currently have. And if you want to double the amount of police officers you have in the town of Haymarket, let's have that housing complex come in. And if not triple, that we would need to function and maintain.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Chief? Kind of identifies it, right? You got some?
No, just made me think about our population threshold. We're always worried about that. 3,500.
That was the next item.
Sorry, I stole your thunder there. No, Chief, I think it's a good assessment because so right now over on Jordan Lane, we have those 3 or 4 units that are on that side. Sort of presents the same situation, right? Where my neighbor's in Prince William, but I'm in Haymarket. And
It does.
So.
It does.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's the obvious one, yeah.
So how do you effectively, now, of course, we still have a 300-yard boundary that allows us to complete our police work, so it's not necessarily like, oh, well, I can't walk across the imaginary line to talk to a person that's involved or engaged in this conflict. But it still results in that issue. Now, okay, you got our men out there every day deciding, okay, who's going to take this crime or who's going to take this report or who's going to take this responsibility. And that's just time focused on issues that we quite frankly don't need. And I mean, I can expand on any one portion. I have read several scholar review papers about crime rates and different things like that. I can expand on anything you want me to expand on. But the resources that we would need to do it appropriately is beyond what we currently have, a lot beyond. And so we would have to be looking at different types of income revenue to support and have the resources available to police that area, whether it's 4 units or 10 units.
Thanks, that's all I have.
Yep. How many units? 96 for 4
96
buildings?
proposed in the town portion, 144 proposed in the county portion. So you're looking at a total of, I believe that comes out to 240.
Yeah, so 96 units, Marchand, for something that size. What's the average populace?
For multifamily?
Yeah.
Three people?
3 people?
4 is generally for like a single family.
So,
720 total.
yeah, I mean, you're looking at a population increase for us of, what, about 350?
And their student generation's pretty low too, what they're estimating in there. So,
Yeah,
But
student
don't
generation,
negate the fact that we still will receive the residual issues from the people that's not in our jurisdiction.
Right, but I'm just looking at our cap of 3,500 population cap that we,
Yeah. But I wanted to ask, go back to what Chief was saying, even without the Haymarket portion, it's still going to be somewhat challenging for us, I
Oh,
would
yeah.
think.
Yeah, it would be usually.
We will be the go-to force
I mean,
for that area.
For the response time, essentially.
Yes, correct. And in high-density areas, you get a lot of conflict. That's the majority of your calls for service. All right, so conflict negates an immediate police response.
Yeah.
And of course, you know that Prince William is really burdened.
Yep.
You know, call to call to call to call to call. So constantly, you know, okay, if it's a shoplifting at Walmart, chances are they're not going to bother us because, you know, the person was either caught, they're either videotaped, there's a non-issue. But two people arguing in the street or two people fighting requires an immediate police response.
Yep.
So who's going to be the closest?
And how many of these incidences usually require backup?
All of them.
Which
And
means,
anytime
you
there's a
know,
conflict.
that this automatically guarantees we need a two-man force on duty at the same time.
Exactly.
So that doubles our force right there.
That's problematic.
Do we not see the same problem potential with the Van Meter project?
Well, we have, and we've addressed that. We're working on that with especially the crime prevention side of it. And there may be that issue, but you don't have quite the high density area. You know what I'm saying? It's more townhouses, so there is a little bit of separation. And in affordable housing, it's multi-use apartments.
I'm sorry, I was thinking of on the other side of QBE, you have that new Van Meter project there.
Yep.
And the
The
other-
active adults, that,
Oh, my
you know,
apologies, yes. Yep.
same sort of thing where I'm sorry.
But it's out of our jurisdiction, so we can at least say, sorry, guys.
No, I'm just saying it's so close, it's right against the boundary, you're going to see some.
It is, and it's but it is kind of away from the business side of things here.
Okay.
Where this is going to be walking distance,
I got you.
so to speak. You're going to see that. And of course, you know, with affordable housing, a lot of people have transportation issues. So you are going to
across the
have
creek
heavier
to get in,
traffic
yeah.
flow. I mean, there's several ways to expand on all the problems that this will bring. And it just brings what it brings if it goes forward, but we have to be willing and able to address it.
So one of the things I was looking at, just a sidebar from that, looking at the location, Emily, is on the transportation side in Route 15 and how that ties in. Even if we're not successful on well, I won't say that. If they're successful in implementing just the Brentsville portion of this, they would want to be very careful as to where that location for access is, given the potential for a future grade separation at 15 and the railroad. So that would be a comment I would certainly throw out there. And I haven't seen the drawings, and I'm not sure where that lands.
And one of the other, while we're on it would land very close, to answer that
So
question.
then they'd have to be very careful about that, yeah.
Yes, and then one of the other comments that I would mention when we're talking about transportation is that sometimes these types of developments, the population does rely on a level of public transportation access, and right now that's not something that's offered on this end of the county. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind as well, of what resources and services are available when it comes to public transportation.
Are you thinking like people walking on 15 without a sidewalk?
And not having a
Busing.
proper sidewalk across the railroad.
That's the bigger one.
Because you assume it's going to happen. I mean, people are going to live there and work at Walmart, work in town. They're going to have to figure out a way to get into
Yep.
town. So.
Based on, when you review the report, based on who they would live here, they're including workers in local government, school system, public safety, hospital workers, retail service sectors, construction trades, and various technical service jobs available in the area. So they say that typically the affordable housing is 40 to 80% range income. It serves those members in that local workforce. So within that radius, a lot of ability to walk places, but you don't have the proper safety controls there. You don't have the public transportation.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the status is. The assumption is the developer has acquired that parcel of land, right? I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But sooner or later, someone is going to come to us and propose to rezone that area, right? I don't know what.
Yeah, they already have a rezoning on it for commercial. And was it like an 8-story hotel or something?
Yeah,
So,
it was already rezoned up to OM in the county level. I do not believe that they own the property right now. I think that it's an application that's been submitted under.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
C1
when-
zoning, that's within the town. Someone's down the line is going to come with some sort of a proposal. Yeah. So I'm not sure what we're comfortable with, but.
Yeah, but in our initial meeting that we had a while back, like I said, we told them that R3 wasn't around for this type of thing. We also tried to hit on it, and at that time, the owner of the property, the other property was there, and I guess he was talking with the owner of the
Danny Humphreys.
the owner of the what is that mowing company over there?
Advantage.
Advantage, yeah, the owner who owns this conservation area, sorry. So he was saying that, he already has kind of verbal agreements that he could purchase it, and that was going to be part of what was required for this development to go on. So I don't know if he's purchased it since then. Do we have any land records of
still
change?
Still showing up on here as Danny Humphreys.
It's still Humphreys?
Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah, so there's still a lot that they need to do, a lot of legwork that they need to do before this can even come close to being invested in. So at least we're not too far down the road where we're telling them to put the brakes on.
Right.
So I think for anyone that's listening, just wanted to be clear that it's not a stigma or a prejudice toward affordable housing. It's the location and access and relationship to services and things like that. It's just not a good location. You would want to have these sorts of developments closer to services and transit and those sorts of things, so, and public services. So just want to be clear that we're not commenting on the types of units. It's, or people that live in those units, it's the services they require.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I would say from another transportation perspective is if this land were to be developed and there was nothing we could do about it, one of the things that I would love to see, and I think Chief would agree with me, is to see if we could reroute that private crossing and get rid of that thing and see if we could get those properties to come out 15 through whatever development does go there. So I would certainly make a play for that. Eliminate that grade crossing, because that's a headache, and it's going to continue to be a headache.
Yep.
That's about the only silver lining I can see, personally.
Yep. We also could discuss the option of, releasing the land,
That too.
BLA? To a BLA?
or whatever,
Like a land swap?
realignment of
Give us all the commercial to
Boundaries.
Heathcote, and we'll give you that residential in the south. Just saying. You know what I mean, right? Commercial along Old Carolina?
Yeah.
Commercial, trade us that. Anyway,
So,
thanks for the presentation.
so what are the next
They
steps?
want us to put the sidewalk in.
Council, read through everything. Please send over your comments or if you have additional questions. I will be working with our friend of the county,
Just going to ask that.
friends, and we will be submitting over comments, namely our very first one of town has yet to receive the proper package materials for the 4-acre portion in the town.
And what deadline did you want for that?
I would like for everybody to bring their comments back for Monday night's meeting.
Okay.
To turn them in to me. We don't necessarily need to discuss in great detail, but if you'll have them to turn in, so I can compile them, I can clarify anything, and we can get them submitted in by the 5th.
Okay. Okay, any more questions on that? Budget work session.
I'm sorry, real quick.
Yes.
Can I'm going to hand the mic over to Chief real quick. He would like to request to add an agenda item, and I think that we should possibly add it in before our last item here on the budget. That would be preferred in the lineup.
Okay. Any objections? Amended. Chief, I guess it's the proposed vehicle use policy?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being willing to throw this amendment on there so we could start discussion this evening. In speaking with the town manager and treasurer, they brought up a very good point that we needed a really good take-home vehicle or a vehicle policy concerning the use of take-home vehicles or cruisers. Currently, you know that we have what's called a hybrid, or commonly known as a hybrid program, to where officers take their vehicles home when they're working, but leave them here when their shifts are done for that period of the week. And that's been working really well. We did have a mileage indicator in there, but I think we wanted to basically make the policy outlined more specifically. But in doing so, we wanted to look at all aspects of it to make sure that the policy was sound in all fronts and all sides. So with that being said, we did bring it up to Finance Committee last week, and was given direction to do some worst-case scenarios for each proposal or section of the plan. And not to belabor this point, to try to get through it, as you can see on page 2, the narrative of our findings, basically, using the parameters of mileage, capital improvements, vehicle maintenance, employee retention, and just sound fiscal management. So going over what our findings were, there's not one set policy used by any majority of the departments. It's really a hodgepodge that's out there, but most do use the same parameters we used in looking at this, and they also use a radius terminology when they're looking at their policy to set an extended mileage amount. In other words, how far they'll let the vehicle go. Having assigned vehicles for officers to take home lessens the amount of maintenance and repairs. Having assigned vehicles improves morale within the department. And of course, I've already went over our current hybrid program. But basically, in a month period, officers take their vehicles home one direction 16 times. So when they come into work with their personal vehicle and then drive home, that's one trip. When they drive back the next day for work, that's their second trip. So it's not home and back one trip, and so on. If we looked at a full take-home policy, we would have to add 12 more trips on in a 1-month period. Our current fuel budget is $43.2, based on the worst-case scenario through EIA findings or projections for the following year. And last year, projections was as high as $5 a gallon. So that's what we projected our budget for, with the mileage that we would normally work the vehicles. Officers average 50,000 miles of patrol duties and consume approximately 3,846 gallons of gas in doing so. The budgetary impacts are as follows. And this is based on our average over the last few months and at the $3.22 a gallon per gallon basis. As you know, at the pumps, you're paying a little bit more than that right now. But that's what I did my figures on, looking at the past couple of months, so we're going to stick with that. Obviously, if there's a percentage increase in the price per gallon, there's a percentage increase associated with the cost of whatever plan that we set forth. So the hybrid program basically right now goes out to 50 miles. So in speaking with finance, we decided to do a 60 and a 50 for comparison. And then we also brought up the fact that it might be beneficial for hiring practices and for retention if we did get somebody within either a 25 or a 15-mile radius that could have a full take-home because they're not that far away. So the two plans you're going to be looking at is the hybrid program for 60, 50, 25, and 15 miles. And then you're going to look at a full take-home, which would include all 28 trips. So you can look at the breakdown. I don't have to go over every specific number, although in the hybrid plan for 60 miles, again, this is worst case scenario. That means that every officer driving is driving 60 miles. Obviously, you know that's not the case. It's not the case currently, and it wouldn't be the case ever, quite frankly. You're going to have some officers that might live, 25 miles away. You might have some officers that live 50 miles away, but that worst case scenario. And also factored in the maintenance of those added miles between the 50 and the 60 plan, as you can see at the bottom of the hybrid 60-mile plan. So 53% of the total driven miles would be to and from home under the 60-mile plan. Under the 50-mile plan, the budget would remain static because that's currently where we're at. And then at the 25 and 15-mile hybrid programs, if council decided that 50 and 60 was too much, too far to go, then you would see what the difference is in the amount of mileage driven. And of course, we would have to remain static at this time, but in the future, we could reconfigure for those numbers. And then flipping on to page 3, then you would see the full take-home. Obviously, you can see that there would be a huge increase with the full take-home and the 28 trips, and what the increase of the budget would be, what the increase of mileage driven over what patrol duties would be, and then what the impact of implementing the full take-home at the 25 and 15 miles. The reason that the budget would remain static in these two instances is because we don't currently have anybody in that realm. There's nobody that would be currently driving a vehicle home 15 to 25 miles every day. But you could still see the mileage that it would take, the gas that it would take, and of course the money at $3.22 a gallon. My recommendation is that we continue to keep the hybrid program that we currently have, but we of course enforce it unless there is some issue that would come up. But I think we should also take into account of proposing the 25-mile take-home rule if down the road we did need to hire somebody. And of course, it would help with retention if somebody did move into that area. So basically looking for input from you all. If you look at page 4, that is a radius map that our wonderful Thomas Britt through GIS made up. So you can kind of look and see where everything would be at. Obviously, in writing general orders and policy, I have no grave concerns of setting anything forth, especially if it's dictated by code or good police practicing. But anything that's has a budgetary impact, I think, needs to be talked about with the finance committee and with full council support or at least input, so we could discuss out and even find a happy ground. Not looking at obviously for any decisions tonight. Just some quick Q&A if there was something you've seen on the preference that you wanted me to expand on. And then we could discuss again next Monday or at the following month, whenever's convenient for council.
Tracy?
Oh. So I love this proposal. Along with retention, I believe it was also noted response times within that radius.
Correct. Especially if we did have a take-home policy a full take-home policy for the ones that would live closer. If we had somebody in the 15-mile radius or the 25-mile radius, then obviously if we did need to call in somebody off duty, it gets them there quick. Currently, the majority of our people are in that 50-mile rule, pretty far out to the 50-mile section. So yeah, recalling them when they're on duty, when they would have access to a patrol car, would work. Obviously it's not going to be as quick a response time as somebody would be in that 15-mile area or that 25-mile area. But that's not a common stance. It's not something that's going to commonly happen, but it is, always try to prepare for the worst. And if the impact on the budget is minimal, then it's worthy to do that, to add on to the fact that it does help with retention, it does help with morale, and obviously the officer has a vested interest in it, ownership when they take their vehicle home. And I'll speak to Finley because he's worked with me for years. Finley, he waxes his cars on the weekend. I mean, he that's to him, he likes doing that. His car is always impeccable, and he does that in his off time. That's not something that we have to pay for. I mean, we'd be glad to do it. We have flagship and can do all that. But when they have that vested interest, they take care of their vehicle, and you get a longer use of life out of the vehicle when you have that. But again, you do get the extra mileage that accumulates with that. So that, to answer your question the best way I could, yes.
No, perfect, thank you.
Good question.
Anyone else have a question?
Yeah. So when somebody drives a vehicle home, so that transportation is just to get back home and then get back into work?
Correct, and you can see in the dictated what our current policy is. The page 1 has our current policy. Now, I didn't copy and paste the whole policy.
Got it.
Because it's about 12 pages long, and it includes a lot of pursuit and different driving like that. But it says, let's see here, trying to find it.
4B.
B, thank you. The car is to be used to travel directly to and from work, to and from the member's residence. A member may stop at a business to pick up an essential item or at the gym purposes for exercise. So if they're on their way home, they need a gallon of milk, okay, stop in the local convenience store and get you a gallon of milk. If you're going to stop and work out, great too. But don't get home and then get back in your cruiser and drive there. And of course, that would be on the way. I don't want them taking like a 15-mile detour to get to their gym, obviously.
Alexander?
Sure. So I made a comment during the planning commission in relation to this.
Okay.
So
Sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. You know, when I heard that officers are able to take the vehicles home, it kind of concerned me.
Yes, sir.
From different perspective. First of all, I didn't understand why. Again, I'm attributing it, I'm relating it to cost, right? Fuel cost, more mileage means more maintenance, right? So it didn't make sense to me as to why they would be allowed to take the town's, cruisers as opposed to their own personal vehicle, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but also the town, we are also paying for the gas, right?
Yes.
Okay. So it just did not make sense to me from that perspective, from the cost perspective. And I asked that question during the last planning commission. And I now I see some of the why we do it, right? But still, I'm on the fence, to be honest with you, right? Again, I don't know if this is the norm with our other police departments, right? And I don't know if it's the norm, but
I would say, and of course, people have varying opinions, including chiefs and sheriffs have varying opinions on this. And the thing is to find what best works for you and your community, and what you can budgetarily afford. But I would venture to say, and this is kind of an off the cuff, about 90% of the departments, especially in Virginia, have some sort of a take-home policy. Very rarely do you find an agency that is park it when you get out. And of course, now that usually you'll see departments like that they call them hot seating cars. The car never rests. Right. Somebody gets out, somebody gets in, somebody gets out, somebody gets in. You get a much, much higher cost in maintenance with those vehicles because they just never rest. They're always working. As 34 years in law enforcement, I would venture to say that a take-home policy is very positively impacted on the department. And there is that, and I'm not advocating at all for a full take-home. I think that is outside the bounds of what we should be paying for here. If we had officers that lived within 5 to 10 miles or lived inside of our jurisdiction, then I would advocate it, because you can also include that in crime prevention. How nice would it be to have 2 cruisers parked right inside of that common area that we're discussing right now? That is a crime deterrent, but we don't have that. So there's no reason for me to advocate for that. But again, when a person takes pride and ownership in their vehicle because it's theirs, you do get a much, much cleaner vehicle, a much better vehicle, and a very well-maintained vehicle most of the time. And again, with morale and the fact that being advantageous to recall people back in, which doesn't happen in our jurisdiction very much, but there is some advantages to it. And as long as the advantages don't outweigh the cost that you can afford, then it's probably a good policy to have.
And I know there are policies as to when they can use such vehicles, for what purpose, but do we have any set of controls in place to identify situations where they're using the vehicles for things that they're not supposed to, like personal use, other personal use?
Well, I think we would know about that, but there's no specific control. If you're asking, like, do I drive to their house and make sure it's 12 hours? No.
Yeah.
What's that? Right. Yeah, we don't put trackers on the vehicles, although we can track the MDTs when they're on. But we usually don't leave that equipment where it can be readily available. As a matter of fact, as you can see, we also make our officers take the weapons out of their cars because everybody knows a police car has a weapon, and you don't want to give a criminal a weapon. But there's no specific control for that. But I'm on the opinion that, if we provide our officers with a badge and a gun of authority, the ability to take a person's life, I think we should be able to trust them with their cars. And if I can't trust them with their cars, I'm not going to trust them with tools of their trade either. But again, there's no specific controls that I have.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I was just going to say, may I?
Go ahead.
To that point, though, there are reviews of gas usage and mileage when we go through things in financials. So if there was like an extreme uptick, that would be a flag, right?
Correct, and it's odd that you said that. Roberto alerted me to an uptick in the last month, which I did do a breakdown, and the mileage was spread over like 3 or 4 cars. So it wasn't like one specific car had a huge uptick. Now, I don't have an answer for that right now. Matter of fact, we were discussing it a few minutes ago when he was showing me some of the graphics on it. But I do have the mileage, and I will look into the fact of why we did have that uptick. And it was like a 20% increase in mileage last month. So
Roberto, you want to talk about the billing and what you can see in the billing with the cards?
Yes. So when it comes to the monthly billings, we do have a review. I actually can track. The system is set up where it tracks the vehicle mileage for the month, how much units of gas it's used, what's its total spend. It separates it by each individual unit. Also tracks it by each officer does have their own gas card. So when they go to Sheets, they use that. They use their own PIN number designated to their own vehicle. If there's ever a change, usually the chief or the lieutenant are really good about informing me that, hey, I needed to swap a card for whatever reason. But as far as control mechanism for that portion, our reports are very detailed when it comes to the transactions, so up to where it even tells us where they have fueled up. So if they were in Winchester, we would know that he used that Winchester in Sheets. Granted, that's saying that they're using our Sheets card. We only have an account with Sheets. But if they were to fuel up somewhere else, that is at their cost. It wouldn't be at the department's cost, at the town's cost. It says we provide that card for them. So there is a mechanism of trying to gauge and control, as Chief had mentioned. I had mentioned to him last week when we kind of brought this up. We are able to kind of start looking at monthly reports, and for the most part, they're pretty close year by year, trend wise. So yeah, we have that mechanism of control, and it's always reviewed by the town manager, the chief, and always obviously our finance as well.
And basically, currently, I believe it's the hybrid model, hybrid plan.
That phrase
Okay.
was coined before I got here, but it
Okay.
seems to stick.
And there is no limitation as to the boundary, I think
50
there
miles?
is. There is?
I think it's 50 miles.
There is currently a 50-mile
50.
boundary.
Okay.
There is one officer that lives outside of that has been allowed to drive his cruiser to his residence. But once this policy is set in place, we are pulling that back in to where he'll be set to the same boundaries that everybody else is.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So is it wrong to offer this as it's a fringe benefit? Would you not say?
Being that everybody, well, the ones that live
Not
far
a negative,
away.
it's just
Yeah, it's a fringe. Yeah, because they don't live close enough to respond to, say, like if they were on SWAT or had some special skill, at least not in a time that we would like. So yes, it is a fringe.
So there's no,
Maybe more like a perk.
well, I'm sorry, maybe perk is a better word, but a perk is that, they save the fuel costs, they save the vehicle costs on their personal vehicle, that's fine. And you had mentioned in here too, it's accountability and pride in their vehicle, but different drivers, different driving styles. I guess you were saying earlier about constantly operating, that's what
That's what
tears up the
a vehicle
vehicles,
apart.
is that One's a jackrabbit starter, one's a grandma.
Yep, one's on the brakes all the time.
okay, exactly.
One barely touches them.
Gotcha. So I wanted to be clear about sort of the change. What is deficient in the current policy that specifically that you need to, is it, I said here it's 50 air miles, but we're talking about 60?
Well, no, we were looking at all the factors that's
Okay.
involved in it and making sure that council, first of all, is informed on what actually we're doing.
Okay.
Has a copy of that. And then can put any parameters in there, like Councilman asked about controls.
Okay.
So, if council felt that, hey, we need to continue with this, or say it's 60 or 50, right, but we want to put the controls in there.
Oh, okay.
So it gives council a say, and it streamlines what we're going to say, how we're going to say it, and how we're enacting it.
I know if there's like a glaring, excuse me, I'm sorry. I know if there's like a glaring deficiency or just some other thing that was unclear.
No, if, matter of fact, the town manager provided me, I didn't bring them over because I really didn't think I would need them, of some minutes that the clerk had provided her with. The 2 months preceding me starting here, the acting chief was tasked with putting a plan like this together. And then I came in and I didn't get informed of that, so I never did do it.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of left from October 2021, so.
We had basic understanding. but
Right,
It
and so
wasn't
now,
documented.
now you have, forthright understanding and have actually a say. And, of course, with the new councilman, it's an educational portion for him, it's a benefit that, he's now asking these questions and wants to know why and can make an informed opinion on a yes or no vote.
So the next,
There's not any one glaring thing that pulls out to say we were doing something wrong. It's just, let's streamline it and make it better.
didn't mean to suggest wrong, it was just, was there some sort of ambiguity in
No,
the
it would
policy
indicate
that was?
if I was bringing something like this, that we were either not doing something correctly or we needed to redo the way we're doing it. This is just more of a streamline, a better outline, and what we want you all to have input into it.
Right.
Because it does concern the money that you're approving and that taxpayers are paying.
Thank
And
you.
it's fully transparent.
Okay.
Oh, I don't disagree.
Right.
And we're not adopting this, we're simply,
No, the
it's for
front page,
transparency
the
and,
front page is where we're at now.
okay,
That's
gotcha.
where we're at now.
Yeah.
And I just want to add something. If I remember our conversation, there's the potential for a hybrid.
Correct.
I know, you like that?
Yeah.
But the hybrid might want to consider, when we're talking about attraction and retention, maybe doing the hybrid to the 50 or 60 perhaps, and then the full take-home for a 15 or 25. That's a potential discussion point as well.
Yeah.
So, keep that in mind.
Yeah, now, everyone done? Okay, my time. You were saying that this is only a part of the policy, right? Because I do see safeguarding of the firearms, but I don't see anything in here for safeguarding the MDAX or the MDTs.
They take those out as well, but that's just common knowledge. I can't speak to whether I could look it up. I can't say if it's in the actual vehicle
Okay.
operations plan, but it's a common knowledge that I want all items like that out of the car.
Yep.
Because especially with the MDAX, is that you have a backdoor in to get into other computers if
Yeah.
you're savvy at that technology, which I am not. But the guys know that I want, especially the weapons though, I want all that out of the car at the end of every day's shift, not at the end of a week shift, but at the end of every day. And it wouldn't be unusual for you to see guys bringing weapons or MDTs into the office through the side door any day of the week.
Yeah. Well, I would like to have some type of safeguarding of the electronics.
Okay.
Should we end it with a Jack Reacher quote?
Sure, go ahead.
About what cops never do? They never vote Democrat, never drive a Cadillac, and never, ever use their personal vehicle.
There you go.
That sounds like a Bosch quote, too. I think that was in Bosch, too. Okay, where do we stand?
Thanks for the
Okay, thank you, Chief. Now we'll move on to the work session, budget, fiscal year budget.
Take a 5-minute recess.
Yes, I would like that. I was just going to pinch it, but hey, let's take.
Looks good. Adjourn.
Okay, let's call this meeting back. We'll continue on with the next agenda item, which is the fiscal year 2024 budget work session. Final draft. Anything you need to comment on, Roberto, or are you just looking for questions?
Well, I'll comment first and then I'll ask for questions. That's okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, so this is revision number 2, as you see in the memo. This takes into consideration the last council meeting. What's the last council meeting? Council went ahead and gave the go-ahead approval for the chief to purchase that SUV, the truck. So we obviously modified on the expenditure side for the police department, on the police department budget.
Right. What number was that again?
It was on page 113, line item 3110056.
Right.
You can see that we have now reduced that from 109 to 66,000 for next year.
And what did we do with the other money, that 43,000?
Oh, we placed it. I placed it back into CIP funds.
In the CIP funds?
So the CIP funds on the expenditure side, which will be line item 94108 on page 116. It is now increased to 180,032 for next year.
108, right.
So it was 180. Okay.
Yes, so by modifying the, having the purchase being approved to be done in this fiscal year for that one vehicle, we went ahead and moved it over there. Is there any other questions on this?
Well, just on the process, just to reiterate, we approved or gave a directive to post for the rate, correct?
Yes,
And we're going to do that
next Monday.
next Monday. So that'll be the hearing on the rate and all the different fees, I assume.
Just the tax rate, the real estate tax
Just the
rate.
tax rate. We're not going to do the fees until
The
later.
fees will be as part of the budget with the
That's right.
CIP, correct?
Okay. And then after, so when are we presenting to the public the budget itself?
So the hope is, next week, I'm also going to request for council to give me the go-ahead or directive to do the public notice for the budget with the associated tax rates for the meeting of May 30th, my apologies, May 30th, for the public hearing to be held on May 30th for the budget.
Right, at the work session. Okay. And then we'll get feedback from the public, and then we'll have a chance to discuss whatever feedback we may get. Okay, in case we need to make adjustments or whatever. Okay.
And just a side note, I will include an updated revision number 3 because in the past week, the town manager has been working on trying to some of these tenants' leases. We have one of our existing tenants. They're going to be increasing their footprint the following year, starting in August. So I made that adjustment for next year's budget. It's not in this one specific one in front of you, but it will be on Monday's meeting, revision number 3. We have also received the documentation that I'll have to have our town attorney review Monday, and as well as the mayor for sign up for a new lease tenant that will start on May 1st, actually this fiscal year, but she'll be on for a year lease. So I'll have to modify that, increase the revenues on that side as well.
Okay, that's everything I have.
I was going to say, and I don't know if I'm going to ask this correctly, but as far as the farmer's market line item, just could you expand a little bit more on the differences between last year and this year? We didn't increase rates or anything. I just want to make certain that we're.
No, thank you, Vice Mayor, for asking that. So on
316502.
6502.
Sure.
Like I have to
I'll
do
let the
this.
town manager answer that question since she's been really.
So, when we put out our new farmers market application, what we did this past year is we recognized that we wanted to increase the application fee just a little bit, not a lot. So in total, we increased it approximately $20 per application. However, our fees are showing a lot higher, the revenue coming in, because we have had better organization and accountability on making sure that every vendor has submitted an application, signed it, and paid for it prior to actually showing up. So all in all, we have had better staff oversight on this. Last year, it was a little chaotic in the processing of applications, and based on what our numbers are showing from last year, there could have been some items that were missed, some payments that could have been missed. So we've had much better oversight this year and tracking on that. And then Roberto can actually give you the breakdown of what money would be moved forward to next year's budget, again, because this event splits both fiscal years.
That's correct. So I did it on a sheet of paper earlier today, but I think it was about 30% of the funds that we have collected will be, yes, about 30% will be current. So about $7,900 I'm going to defer to the next fiscal year, because that is there's a total of 31 market dates, and I believe 15 fall within this fiscal, I don't want to give out numbers without confirming, but I took the numbers of between the 31 days that fall in here, took a percentage of that, placed it to this fiscal year so we can address the cost of revenues on that, and then that left the amount of $7,900 for the following year, for the full year, to close off from July 1st through November. Yep, and it's a common practice we do. We also do as well in June, come June, when we start having applications go live for Haymarket Day. Councilman Alexander, so you're aware of it. Haymarket Day is one of our bigger events. The town really doesn't put any money out. It's self-sustained. We do collect the funds early, but we do defer that funds because we collect them in this fiscal year, but the event doesn't happen till the following fiscal year, so we'll go ahead and show that deferment as well.
Okay.
So. Any questions?
This line item here, transfer from ARPA funds, what is that about?
Okay, so I believe at the Planning Commission, we talked briefly about this. So during the pandemic, the town received funds from the American Rescue Plan. The town received $1.7 million. The council at the time had voted on to go ahead and use those funds for what they were meant to be, for infrastructure, for the park sidewalk, for example, and this is what we're using to fund that. But that money is set aside. You won't see it on the budget because we have put it kind of in the lockbox. It's set aside. If it's $1.7 million, because of this amount, it was under the $10 million, the town was able to declare it, to take it as an allowance, one-time allowance. So we do not have to go through the process of the reporting. Anything 10 million or over, any localities that receive that would need to report quarterly what they're using the funds for, tracking it in a way. We do not need to do that, but the town council did vote on to using it for what it's meant for, and that's to assist the residents, but also for infrastructure.
So for this budget here, is it being used primarily for infrastructure?
Yes, it is. So right now we have the 1.7. We put it in an escrow account, but we're using it for right now the park sidewalk, and that's aside from proffers as well. Proffers are additional funds coming in that we can use, but as we get closer to the budget, I'm going to have that part of the presentation. But I'm more than happy to sit down with you too, and we can go through those numbers as well.
And one observation, I can make time to sit down with you, go over this, but I noticed that the total income line item and the expense are exactly dollar to dollar, exactly the same.
On the budget?
Yes.
It's a balanced budget, yes.
But, okay.
Yeah. So, but if you look at what we're the actuals, you will notice that we're collecting more revenues and we're not expending as much out. So we're still within the budget as how we're spending out the money.
Okay. The reason I ask that question is I don't know whether or not our expenses should be driven based by our income, right? I don't know if they are. If we're trying to spend every revenue, every income, every cent on an annual
no,
basis.
No. So the town is in a very unique position. We're still growing. The past 2-3 years, I believe, during COVID, we briefly spoke on this once. With so much of the businesses, a lot of our revenues have been driven by the commercial side. With all the commercial properties, assessment-wise, and then just with the business themselves. But no, any funds that we do have, when we have a surplus, for example, last year we had a massive surplus because the budget was very conservative, but we did receive more revenues. Council had chosen to vote on doing a tax refund for the residents. This year we are looking to have another surplus, but as prior years, what we've done with the surplus is putting it back into the reserves.
I mean, ideally, we want to run surplus on an annual, every year, right? Ideally.
Ideally.
Yes, sir.
Certainly want to have your operating revenue cover your operating expenses, that's for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah,
You don't want to have to dip anywhere into
definitely,
reserves or
yes,
anything else.
definitely. Okay.
You guys good?
We talking about the CIP separately?
Yes.
Okay.
So if we're okay with any more questions.
Before we do that, I'm looking at the top tax. I see we got a number that I was assuming would map directly to the same number of expenses for economic development. I see there's about 30-something thousand difference. Is that money being spread?
Yes, it's being spread. 2% is being spread through the operational budget, and then the other 2% is being used for tourism, and the 3% is per the MOU.
Okay. So,
2 cents, yes, sorry, 2 cents.
which makes sense, about 30,000, okay.
Yes.
That makes sense.
And,
I was thinking it was paralleling, and I didn't.
and Councilman Alexander, I don't want to mess up your name, so we go Alexander. There is a, there is a MOU set that I feel that you, now being on council, should be made aware of, so I would definitely be more than happy to talk to you. It concerns with the agreement that was made with the Hilton Hotel, with the prior administration, prior mayor, prior council, not this current sitting council, but I'd be more happy to share that with you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I totally forgot about our split, 2% going into, and the other going into economic development. Okay, thanks. That's my only question.
Okay, if there's any other questions on
No,
the
that's-
proposed budget, okay. What I also wanted to include in this revision is, along with this revision, because it will be part of the budget, is our draft of the CIP. I will let our town manager speak on this, as she'd be the best person to explain it.
Okay, so at our meeting last week with the Planning Commission, myself and Roberto presented to them our draft CIP plan that we had. Again, this is one of the plans that we pull forward and we adjust our funding. It's kind of our wish list, if you would like to think of it that way, of what we would like to accomplish over the next 5 years. These are very general cost numbers here. This is not exact, but it is a general funding plan. So with that, we have highlighted some areas that really need some work and attention along our streetscape, looking to do some work starting as early as next year once we have that maintenance position in place and can identify all of the issues. We have also put on here additional funding for the park sidewalk to Blight Drive. We ideally should be done with the engineering scope here very soon and can work towards funding the construction portion. Town Center property, we just received the approval of the site plan from our outside agencies. So we are ready to move forward with that town center site plan in discussing our funding options, our construction timeline, putting out RFPs. So we have that item here as well. The Haymarket Community Park, I know these two numbers are not matching up with what we have proposed. We are kind of leaving this a little open until we have a better idea on our discussion. For the time being, we can modify these numbers so that they better reflect one option or the other, and we can go with the higher option of keeping the building. Not that that's the higher option per se, but we can go with that option. Town hall signage, so we have the approved sign plan for signs above the town hall building and the police department building. Based on a number I received, I need to get additional quotes because it is outside of the expenditure policy that we have in place for one quote. So I'm working on that and hopefully can work on spending out that monies this fiscal year. Gateway sign program. This is something that has been discussed for many years now. And we have left it in here. I think these numbers have changed since our last discussion. These were numbers I originally received in 2019 from the company that did the Town of Leesburg historic sign program. So if interested, we can talk to them further about what new numbers would be, or we can leave these as placeholders. This was for signage at all of our entry points on the roadways. What this does not include, that we need to be mindful of, is any purchasing of land or any additional work that would need to go into obtaining easements. Quiet zone implementation, we've left this on here, but Joe and I have had some conversations with the county on the likelihood of getting the quiet zone, but again, we've left it on here so that if we can continue to work down the path and things look positive for us in that endeavor, we would have some funding ideas available. And then again, we have the police department items, which we have talked through previously, but I'm sure Chief would be happy to answer as necessary on those.
You done? Mm-hmm. So this is with the planning commission right now, though?
That is correct. That's a draft that is with the planning commission. So returning to them mid-May for their next meeting. They will have more of a narrative to go along with what each of these would entail. So you won't just see streetlights repairs, you would see streetlight repair and then what exactly we're envisioning that line item would include.
Okay. Caboose? Caboose?
The caboose. So staff is working on putting out an RFP for the painting of the exteriors of our structures. That includes scoping out the caboose work as well. It needs to be.
Looks like the blight money almost.
It does. So one could argue that the peeling paint on the caboose meets a blight, a level of blight. It does. That is in our ordinance that we should never have a building get to that point. So we are working on fixing our own blight.
That's a interesting concept. Yeah.
Well, it certainly needs to be.
Needs it.
If we keep it, and it seems we are, although some would argue against that, but it is part of the fabric of our community at the moment.
I think we should finish the park building discussion and keeping that before we start a second discussion on keeping assets. And then I can identify all the assets.
Yeah. There are some things that's not on here that I think might need to get added.
Okay.
I don't know if the stormwater management funding needs to be put on it or not, strictly because of the assessment. I think that's all rolled into this year's money.
Thank you for bringing that up. That was right after this discussion. So I received an email from the county, and let me tell you that amount. Give me 1 second to pull that back up. They reached out to us end of last week to ensure that we are still good for our monies that we allocated. So that was a 20% match. And with that, let me look at what that was. $32,000. The grant itself is for 160, and our 20% cost share amount would be 32.
What was that for again?
That is for the EPA community grant.
Is that more of a study, or is that to do some real work?
That's more of a study to come in and analyze and do a assessment of our stormwater.
Yeah, and hopefully that would give us a baseline to pawn off our responsibility for any of our streetscape curb and gutter to go to Prince William County.
Or maybe seek other funding.
Yeah, or seek other funding, exactly. Also on here, the county has allocated money to bring sidewalks all the way up to the edge of town. So I think we need to put in connector sidewalk line in here for, at least I know, the north side of Jefferson Street and the south side. I think we already have constructions going to take care of the east and west sides of town, but
I will contact our supervisor and make sure that I have the most recent plan for the north side of Jefferson Street, but the current construction that's ongoing right now should provide that connection needed to the north side. I think that we will need to look at the south side of how we're going to provide that connection to Somerset's newest shared use path that they're putting in.
yeah, and
That
I
will
see that
be-
being more because it's a waterway that we got to cross.
And a railroad.
And the railroad tracks. But also, I know most likely the crosswalk is not going to be put in place in our construction by Robinson's Paradise. So that will be a dollar item for us.
Again, I need to look at the plans that the county imposed. I believe that there is a crosswalk included in their plans. So their sidewalk or shared use path is going to come down the east side of Jefferson Street, and then there is a crosswalk proposed over to the west side.
Good. If it's not our funding, awesome. But those are the only two added items that I see. Does anybody have any others? Marshawn?
On this Washington Street beautification, we have the 10 sidewalk repairs. Is it too soon to start doing replacement? Adding that as a line item? Or is that going to follow up once our maintenance position can rank it, I guess?
We talked about that at the planning commission meeting. So what I think we should do is, I'm sorry, instead of repairs, that should have said replacement. That's an error on my part. The one that's green, that's highlighted, town sidewalk, that should have said replacement.
Well, replacement probably needs to be in there as well. Unless, or repair, I mean, right? Or would the solution be
So-
replace it if it needs to be repaired?
A previous train of thought was that your ongoing maintenance costs are not part of CIP. So I would
Oh, okay.
flag
Gotcha.
town sidewalk repairs as the repairs to the stamped concrete. That's one I'm referencing. I would flag that as general maintenance in our maintenance line item.
Same with streetlights. We have on here repairs, but do we need to have a replacement on the CIP too, or no?
That might be better flagged as replacement.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine, 'cause I know that's one of the things too, our light poles are starting to.
Yeah, let me modify
All the
those two
flagpoles need to be
as
replaced.
replacement.
Light poles, yeah.
And, yeah. I
So
mean, the light poles, I think they're up to like $9,000 now, so if you really look at it, you're,
You want
I-
all in, replace, buy, replace?
well,
Install.
10 to 11 now.
yeah, 10 to 11 now. And so this is just saying we're going to have 2 get knocked down
Right.
Oh, the
in the next year or so, and then, you know,
freakish month of,
and then the other's just peripheral replacement of flag arms and,
Correct.
which is maintenance, okay. Sidewalk, streets, and parking. Southbound Jefferson is the park plan, or no, the town center plan, right? And then northbound, that's to offset with it, okay. The hotel gave us the right of way for that, but we just need to match it, okay.
Yeah.
And the biggest discussion on that will be the relocation of utilities.
Okay, that's where a lot of money's coming from, okay.
Yeah.
So we're adding, turn lane's part of the master plan, but we're categorizing it differently, okay, that's fine.
The turn lane that's part of the master plan is an interim phase, I would consider it, because we can't make it that full turn lane that we would want
Until you
until
have a
we have
matching
a
one.
receiving
Oh, okay.
on the other side.
Gotcha.
So you can't do a left turn only and then have a straight right,
But have
which
a
is an ideal
receiving, yeah.
situation. According to VDOT, that's an ideal situation. You can't have that until you have a receiving on the other side.
Makes sense, good point, thank you.
And that turn radius is pretty tight. We got to see if we can even do that just
Point
through
is,
engineering plans.
There's a suggestion for a roundabout there, but
Oof, no room for that at all.
Can I just jump on there?
Sure.
For 1 second, with the turn lane? Don't you have to do stormwater over here too, before you can do the turn lane?
On our side, or,
Our side.
yes, that's part of the master plan for
Right,
town
the
hall.
underground system.
Yes, so all of that is looped in together with our site plan.
thank you for clarification. So missing links on sidewalks, QBE property, assume that will, once it ever develops, or if it redevelops, that'll take care of that.
Ideally.
And then on the south side along Green Hill, I guess that would be a sidewalk to nowhere, because it wouldn't connect to anything. In front of the pool, so it stops at, is it St. Paul, not St. Paul?
It's not
I think it's outside of
That's
town.
town.
outside town. The clubhouse, the pool house.
Yeah, in front of
that's
the
it.
clubhouse, there's no, yeah, but it would,
That's
But that's in
outside of
Gainesville.
town.
but it starts in town.
I think it starts like halfway through the road, to be honest.
So part of it's in front of the clubhouse, and then
Yeah,
go
but
all the way
it-
down to tennis courts, goes into the
Well,
county.
yeah, the property line, the boundary line adjustment, right.
I think there's a small section that we would, but anyway, we would need to link it.
That's a good question.
So those are the only two missing links. What's that?
Thomas with his GIS, he can figure it out.
What was that?
No, no,
Oh,
no.
Thomas will figure it out. Google Maps. can
But
figure it out.
I don't think the whole thing is in the town.
No, I agree, but I know there's a portion in front of the clubhouse, or the pool at least.
But it's interesting because the houses on the east side of, what's that, Green Hill Crossing Drive? They're in the county, they're not in the town until you get further down.
Yes.
Red House Road.
I was gonna look at
He's
the map.
looking.
Just walk it away.
Clubhouse is about 100 feet, no, 50 feet.
But it's in Gainesville though.
50 feet on our side, then it goes into the county. Anyway, but it's a sidewalk to nowhere, so we would need to coordinate with the county to get that done.
Is it still on HOA property?
I'm not gonna look at the map. Yeah, I don't know if we have it dedicated yet or not.
The new resident, we
Oh.
can assign that
Oh,
for
I see how that
homework.
works.
Yeah.
Okay. Dang it, I shouldn't have brought it up.
Yeah, because a good chunk of that is concrete.
They did a boundary.
It's not even brick or stamp.
That
Yeah.
is all in the town now,
Community park, we already talked about.
so it's shifted.
Town signage. The historic district sign on the highway on 66. Is that even,
I have to get with VDOT about another sign on the highway, so let me
We would be
investigate.
responsible for the historic district, and that's a monthly fee.
yeah, it was like 15 grand, I think, initially to get it, and then there's that yearly. But that would be, economic development wise, that would be a good.
Easy spend.
Easy come, easy go.
That's all I have for now, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for indulging. Dang it. When funding the town center master plan construction, by this estimate, are we not anticipating completing that project till 26, 27? How does that,
So I think what we need, hold on. You said town center master plan?
are we thinking that we're still fully funded, we're not, until we get the 1.8 million, we can't move on it, or can we use ARPA funds to supplement that, or?
So the thought has always been, Councilor Schneider, that with the prior office manager or business manager, the thought has always been that the town, in order to complete this project once it's done, the plans ready to go, is that by 2025, 26, the town will have paid their debt obligation in full. And then have to go into the discussions about bonding the project, putting another loan out to execute this project.
You and I think we talked about that before.
Yeah, and it's been sitting there because the project here, I think you were probably on board as a planner here when it started with the initial town center master plan. It's been ongoing for a while. It's been put back on the burner for a bit, then brought back up, put back forward. This is like we're trying to just get it there now. So obviously, I think this timeline may have to be adjusted, depending on where we're at then.
To accelerate it or delay it more? To accelerate?
Probably push it, accelerate it,
What was that?
accelerate it.
Okay.
Well, the product we're getting at the close of this is the biddable documents,
Yes.
essentially.
Yes.
Full site plan, already approved through outside agencies, biddable document, we can put out RFPs for it, get that coming in, so we could have a really good idea, cost estimate very soon.
And that can also be done with a phased approach,
Yes.
which is what we're talking about earlier.
And the biggest cost with that was stormwater.
I think.
Stormwater is going to be that. Anyway, so that's part of it too, is that do we necessarily have to wait till we're sort of incrementally doing it, but if this is something we can rob Peter to pay Paul to move that project along, so we can at least get it under, at least put out to bid and start to get it under. But if it
Yeah.
correlates to the debt funding, if we got to look at that structure or debt relief, then we got to.
Like get the curb and gutter out there, and then get the turn lane paved, and then get internal paved. We can do it in phases.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, are we done now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
We're done.
Next item.
Sorry.
Speak
Roberto,
up,
you
speak your
finished?
piece. You finished, Roberto?
No, I'm done. Just be aware that on Monday I will be coming with a request to get a directive from council for the budget notice, for the public notice for the budget with the rates. Public hearing, yes. To be held for May 30th.
Based on the 111.111.
Yes.
No higher, maybe lower, let's see.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn?
A second?
Second?
Motion is second, all in favor? We have adjourned.
That was a good one.
Oof, 2 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours.